He's reborn as an ant, a little pathetic ant worker who just hatched and can barely dig the ground. Meanwhile, the monsters around him are huge and hungry, eager to eat him right from the get-go. Now he has no choice but to run, hoping to get strong enough to deal with them later. Just recently, he was a human, and here's how he became an ant. As this guy wakes up, he tries to understand where the hell he is. Turns out, he just died. The last thing Anthony remembers is casually reading a book in the comfort of his home, and now he's stuck in this endless white void. If this is heaven, then where's the swimming pool and the all-you-can-eat buffet? He then gets another system message saying that he will soon awaken to experience life again in a new world, and his guide there will be Gandalf himself, who says that Anthony will be reborn into the magical world of Pangera, where destiny and luck will determine his fate. He'll start with some initial stats that seem pretty solid on paper. Anthony even hopes that maybe he'll be strong, like the MC in his favorite video game, but a more detailed rundown lists his skills as digging, acid shot, grip, and bite. And even more shockingly, his species identification lists him as a hatchling ant worker. Anthony just can't believe he's going to be reborn as an ant. If his mana is non-existent, then he can say goodbye to the dream of being a sorcerer. Gandalf has some explaining to do, and his skills rundown was just weird. There's the bite, then there's the much more bizarre acid shot. Where the hell were his overpowered MC skills? The most alarming of all was being listed as a hatchling ant worker, a Formica. He'll not only be reborn as an ant, but a newly hatched worker ant at that. Maybe Anthony royally screwed over someone in his past life, so Gandalf the system is punishing him. But that's impossible. He barely had any connection to other people in the past. Judging by his empty bookface inbox and his crippling introversion, he was painfully reminded that he didn't have any friends or any other meaningful connections. Gandalf urged him to go forth and forge his own path. Maybe it will be the ant's path. If that's the case, then Gandalf can just go and forge his mother too. Wholly unprepared for what's to come, the gruff voice started counting down for the initialization of the soul transfer. 3, 2, 1. It felt like everything went mute when the count finished. Soul transfer has been successfully completed, and with it comes the booting of the hatching process. Anthony has been thrust into a bizarrely uncomfortable position. His body felt weird. It felt like being squeezed in from all sides as he shook fervently. He wasn't fully buying all the text boxes from earlier, but he's really being reborn as an ant. It's really happening. Surveying his new frail body, he felt 6 legs. That's 1 check for the ant body checklist. 2 antennae are present. His strong mandibles are fully functional. Counting from head to the end of his abdomen, he counted 3 distinct body segments. He used to have pet ants and now he's become one as well. It sounds like a weird nightmare scenario. Not to mention the poor lighting condition. It's darker than a moonless night in his current location. Everything's pitch black, and it's not helping that his vision's as blurry as can be. But upon walking for a little bit, Anthony started seeing some faint and blurry, but behind the light at the end of the tunnel, there was something blue. Fortunately, he can still see colors. Aside from that, he wondered what else he was capable of. Maybe it's time to use his new ant anatomy to its full potential. Sensing the environment using antennae felt weird, but he could feel unidentifiable smells and air currents ahead. The standout smell was the scent of staleness, which indicates that he must be under the ground. But if he's an ant, then wasn't he supposed to smell pheromones? With no pheromones to sense, then where's his brethren, the colony? Anthony has been given a second chance in life, and he doesn't want to be a loner in this one too. Upon walking for a few more minutes, he started catching on to the scent similar to his. Maybe a new comrade was waiting at the other side of the tunnel. He just needs to follow the blue pulsating light while hoping that nothing bad can happen as he reunites with an ant brother. His excitement grew the closer he drew to the exit. He excitedly scurried to meet a fellow ant body determined to assist in whatever task they'd need for the glory of the colony. But his arrival at the end of the tunnel did not go as he expected it would. His new comrade looked like he was in deep trouble as he flew in the air against his will. On the other side was an abominable beast, grinning happily with his sharp teeth on full display. Densely packed muscles contained under a strong layer of rough scales. It's the stuff of nightmares for someone as small as Anthony the ant. With the possible comrade neutralized, the reptilian beast was free to predate on his prey while smugly crunching away. He didn't even eat the ant in one go. He bit the poor guy's body into pieces first. Anthony started panicking. He's just a guy who loved ants and books. He didn't sign up for whatever this was. As much as he would like to refuse, this was really happening. This is his reality now. Ants getting chowed down and trampled by monsters. The other ant trapped in the monster's feet looked at him with pleading eyes, and it felt like a wake-up call. What can a single ant even do in his position? Well, there's just one thing that came to Anthony's mind. It's his only move. It's to run as fast as his newly hatched 6 legs could possibly move. Run like his life depended on it, because it did. Running for the first time in a new body, he was clumsy as hell. He even tripped and fell face first. After running for a long time, he should have escaped the territory of that monster now. But what if another one casually waltzes down this tunnel and spotted him as a quick snack? His only way of survival was to throw away his human conventions and to think like an ant. As if by instinct, he knew what he had to do. Dig! Dig as hard as he could. It's one thing to know what an ant would do, but it's another to execute it. His legs were not cutting it, he was just scratching the ground. That's when Anthony remembered his time observing his pets. Ants use their mandibles to dig, so he basically needs to dig the ground using his face. Without wasting another second, he immediately buried his dependable mandible in the rough surface and started munching on dirt. Now this is what you call digging. He made more progress in just a few seconds, using his face compared to using his legs for a few minutes. After digging to an appropriate depth, he carved out a spherical space with plenty of room to move. With a new base camp established, Anthony the ant could finally lie on his back after a hard day's work. He's safe for now, but getting spotted by other animals would be a death sentence. How did he even get to this place in the first place? It hadn't even been a full day, and he had already encountered a fearsome beast. New ants should be born inside a colony, protected and surrounded by allies. Judging by the fate of his poor fellow ant up in the reptile's territory, things are messy. He might not be the only one dropped into these hopeless straits, which means that a raid was afoot. With a bit more time to think, Anthony remembered that Gandalf the system said something about a skill point and biomass. The world that Anthony now inhabits is a mystery. The descent of the system resulted in the civilization's hefty gains, but they can no longer recall what they've lost. Back to Anthony's dilemma, he currently has 1 skill point and 1 biomass to spend. He has to make it count. If this is a game-like situation, there should be some sort of menu screen he can access. At first, he tried raising his legs and screaming "level up" into the air. Not only did it not work, but he also looked like a fool too. Another idea cropped up in his mind. Maybe this one will do the job. He resolutely swiped in the empty space in front and yelled, "Status open," as loud as he could. And it worked! A very interesting text prompt appeared in front of him. He still can't tell if his stats are high or low, but regardless, he can see them freely now. At the Skills tab, he saw Grip. Maybe it means that he'll be able to hold on to things pretty good. In its description, it stated that Grip is the ability to hold onto surfaces and objects without letting go. An example of its application is the ability to walk through walls. Anthony's eyes sparkled with joy after reading that. This might be the merciful and triumphant return of Lord Gandalf the System, his lord and savior. He might just be a text box, but he would surely have the most luxurious beard and eyebrows in the world. In lieu of a better name for this praiseworthy voice of blessing, Gandalf will stay Gandalf for the time being, and Anthony will praise that name for he has been bestowed the most precious gift, the ability to access crucial information with a single thought. Looking at his skill spread, he knew that focusing on making the right choice was vital. Should he take the acid shot? Maybe improving his digging abilities would provide more benefits. Gandalf is great, but it's up to Anthony to figure out what his skills can do. As far as he knows, there are many species of ants on Earth that are capable of shooting formic acid from their rear zone. So, he must belong to one of those monstrous species of acid-spraying ants. It opens up the option to attack without getting too close to the target. It's a course of action that could lead to avoiding instantaneous destruction in combat. A long-ranging attack would be very helpful, but considering his current predicament, biting, crawling, digging, and shooting acid aren't really the best tools to focus on right now. What Anthony severely lacks is information. He hasn't figured out where the heck he is and what kinds of other creatures inhabit this place other than ants and croca beasts. He's pretty positive that he doesn't have vocal cords, so he only has himself to rely on for info gathering out in the tunnels. Going out there alone with who knows how many strange horrors could cause unspeakable harm would be madness. Just thinking about what could kill an ant on the surface was already mortifying. Anthony had to try and calm himself down from having a full-on panic attack. He must stay rational and chill to stay alive. After giving himself a pep talk, Anthony locked in. He only has himself to rely on from now on. He's already figured out his base skills. He just needs to spend his skill points. That's the million-dollar question, though. How does he even go about it? The answer came just as he was thinking about it. Gandalf himself gave him the prompt to spend his skill points. He couldn't help but praise this wise and magnificent disembodied system voice. He wished for Gandalf, the bringer of hope and light's beard, to remain fluffy as ever. There are a lot of options, so it's hard to narrow down the optimal choice. He needs to go about this thing logically. Being able to run faster would undoubtedly help him escape enemies when push comes to shove. Tunnel sense would also make it easier for him to navigate the field of the underground. Bite and acid are purely offensive moves that could help him fight more effectively when the situation calls for it. As for body improvements available to purchase with biomass, he could choose exoskeleton, mandibles, legs, eyes, antennae, and acid gland. It's not far-fetched to say that out of all the inhabitants of this area, he's currently the weakest. So he chose to improve his eyesight using 1 point of biomass, and he spent his 1 skill point on stealth, effectively improving his ability to hide and move without being seen. Upon confirmation, his eyes started burning like hell. It was like a literal fire was ignited in his cornea. The sudden pang of pain felt like a betrayal from Gandalf himself. Anthony rolled around the floor, trying to distract himself from the pain of his burning eyes. But once things had settled down, He admitted that it wasn't really as bad as he thought for body improvement. If he still had a human body, the process would have undoubtedly taken forever. Now he has gained effective countermeasures for what the territory has to offer. With newfound confidence, he crawled his way out of the tunnel because it was time to explore. His vision felt clearer. There are no distinct smells or detectable vibrations in the distance. He was presented with a choice between two pathways. The right path is where the beast ate the other ants, so that's a no-go, which leaves him with only one choice. Go left and take on whatever this path may have in store for him. The panicking ant was gone. Anthony, the confident explorer, had taken over. He hurriedly crawled as fast as possible, and his speed wasn't bad at all. Anthony laughed inwardly as his adventure was going on without any hitch. Logic dictates that hanging upside down should help his stealth and grip skills. Now he just needs to use his new eyes. Compared to before, he could see a little better now. He even spotted mysterious twisting and branching blue veins in the rocks. With improved vision, he can also see what's going on with his body. With time, a newborn ant's soft and white exoskeleton should harden. Continuing his crawl, he eventually reached the end of the tunnel and was greeted by a blinding light. It was coming from the blue veins and the pool of water in a cavern. The reservoir was huge, but so were the monsters hanging around it. He was so focused on the water that he almost didn't see the fearsome beasts lurking around. Assuming that he's the weakest creature right now, he'd be as good as dead if he's seen. Stealth will not only be vital for survival but also for effective information gathering. As for his eyesight, everyone knows that having bad eyesight sucks. Anthony was so used to human vision that switching to pathetic ant eyes was disorienting. If something wasn't moving, he could barely see at all. You must remember that ants are a communal species, thousands to millions of weak individuals combining to create something strong. A single ant would have terrible senses, and they make up for it with unity. That's precisely what makes his position miserable. He's all alone, and he's supposed to survive when he could trip over a napping dragon with his bad eyesight. So he was determined to make improving his eyes a priority, and wouldn't stop until he could spot a cockroach twitch through 5 meters of solid stone. After some time, Anthony developed his new red exoskeleton. As he surveyed the cliff above the pool, he started hearing some awful noises all around. Walking up to the walls, he knew that he needed to get a closer look. After a few minutes of gripping and racing to the top, he's almost at the source of the sound. Charting the ground with his improved eyes, he just can't seem to pinpoint the spot. He could barely focus with all the strange blue lines wriggling on the surface getting in the way. Seeing the droplets of water coming out of the ceiling, he finally saw the source of the water pool. But that shouldn't be the source of the bizarre noise he kept on hearing. Anthony really needs to lock in, as there must be something else that he's not seeing. It was common sense, but he failed to connect the dots. Of course, it was the monsters that were making those noises. From the safety of the ceiling, he observed the growling wolf beast below. Noticing that the dog's eyes were drifting his way, he immediately hid behind a protruding rock. That was way too close for comfort. Maybe it's time to test out his new ability. Anthony finally busted out his brand new stealth mode skill. His red exoskeleton immediately turned transparent. It was sick. With his exposure being taken care of, he should be able to observe what's up with this pool in peace. He already got a good look at that nasty wolf lizard beast that almost spotted him earlier. What's next up to take note of is none other than his worst enemy, the one that slaughtered his fellow ants, the homewrecker and baby snatcher himself, the malignant croca beast. No matter how he looked at this monster roster, Anthony couldn't help but feel that something was off about the situation. None of these dangerous creatures were attacking each other. It's like they have a quiet agreement made in a round table or something. Anthony didn't cross out the possibility that he missed a Great Monster Peace Treaty meeting or something like that. He knew that it would be impossible to get any solid answers by staying still in one place. Maybe moving a little closer to the action would help, but he must constantly remind himself that slow and steady wins the race. Crawling down from the ceiling took a few minutes with his size. If ants could physically sweat, then water would already be running off his entire body so fast that it would be enough to fill a second pool in this mysterious cavern. But his exercise wasn't for naught. Moving around with stealth active has leveled it up to level 2. He traveled a significant distance to get down to where the action was. His initial suspicion regarding skills was correct. With constant use, they can be trained to higher levels. Hiding and observing would essentially allow him to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He could actively gain precious information while training his stealth. While his confidence was ballooning, he had to shoot it down and snap out of it. Being too cocky like this was bad. If he's spotted, he'll be dead meat. Calming down, he got close enough to see the next set of monsters roaming around the water. There were beasts tangled in a clump, so it was pretty hard to see what it really was. Upon getting closer, he was greeted with piercing red eyes, blue pincers, and legs. Hundreds and hundreds of legs. Anthony saw the gruesome anatomy of the centipedes and couldn't help but throw up. He cursed this damn dungeon for showing him something so disgusting. He could really use some meds right now. As for the last resident of this cursed place, the lizard monster didn't look so bad. He does need to watch out for those nasty spikes though. He might be the weakest right now, but Anthony could see the possibility of turning all these terrible creatures into a possible harvest of biomass. All the points in the world are just waiting for him. But in order to do that, preparations need to be made and they have to be thorough. Over the next few hours, he diligently stayed over the pool while gradually shifting his position to stay hidden from the residents. He carefully observed the way the creatures moved, taking special note of where they went after leaving the pool area. On hour 1, the first pair to depart were the centipede beasts and the croca beast. Strangely, they headed for the same place to exit. On hour 2, the next one to call it a day were the wolf lizard beasts. They went straight for a small tunnel at the south end. On the third hour of observation, the last one to leave the pool was the spiky lizard as it crawled to a wall and disappeared. It looks like we have another wall dweller like Anthony himself. He'd call the reptile brother if he didn't have to hunt down and eat the prey. That intense espionage session raised his stealth to level 3. In this place, patience is rewarded. It came at a perfect time too because his poor ant claws needed a break badly. After arriving at his exit point, the home sweet home was finally just one dig away. Anthony wished that he could relax, but he can't afford to do so. There's more work that has to be done. First, he could desperately use more breathing room in his base camp. That's going to require some digging. Using his strong mandibles, he started munching on the ground excitedly. He diligently gathered the soil by instinct in the process of securing his place. Just when he hit digging level 2, a notification congratulating him for securing a proper nest sounded out. Finally, after digging like a madman, he could take a little breather. He felt a familiar feeling akin to when his family stopped sending him money and neglected to put food in the fridge. He's starting to get hungry, and he's no stranger to the sensation. As his stomach grumbled, he convinced himself that he just must wait. When he wakes up, he can go to hunt his first prey. He already has a spiky target in mind after all. The next day quickly came, and Anthony was currently perched on the ceiling of the cavern. His claws dug into the cold rock and a single thought was floating in his mind. He was so hungry that he was drooling at the sight of the monsters below. But with hunger comes weakness and shakiness. He was starting to run out of steam bit by bit. His mind was filled with chocolates, bread, cakes, and steaks. All the delicious things he was able to eat in his previous life spinning through his head. The hunger has gotten so bad that his mind is starting to play tricks on him. The last time he saw the croca beast, he could have sworn that it looked like a piece of meat and nearly leaped down for a bite from the ceiling. Even the nasty centipedes are starting to look more and more like a tangle of delicious noodles served on a golden platter. Anthony needs to take care of this hunger problem before he gets himself killed by chomping on something that he shouldn't. He's been prepping his next move for way too long to let his stomach get in the way of progress. 2 days. It has been 2 whole days of prep work. He studied every aspect of this end of the cavern in excruciating detail. 2 days of little to no sleep combined with debilitating starvation are giving him trouble focusing on staying awake. He has spent so much time hanging upside down over the water basin that he nearly fell asleep and dropped into the water multiple times. Looking at that mysterious pool, he knew that falling would be a swim that was far from enjoyable. A welcome side effect of pushing himself to the limits as a spy with his stealth mode active the whole time was raising the ability to level 4. Thanks to spending his downtime digging away and expanding his hiding place, his dig ability has climbed up to level 3. That's what Anthony does. He prepares and he grows. That's how the weak can target the strong. Still, hunger is a hard enemy to face. He could only hope that he could successfully conquer his first prey soon. As his antennae twitched, he sensed the target closing in. He could already smell the stench coming from the beast. When Anthony saw the light being reflected from a pair of reptilian eyes inside a groove, he knew that it was almost showtime. His chosen prey has been using the wall on the side of the cavern as a resting place, crawling down to get a drink in the pool once each day. It's basically an isolated creature with a predictable movement pattern, a creature that can be defeated. After a few minutes, the spiky lizard finally came out of its hidey hole for its daily drink. It's about time to test if Anthony's prep work could lead to a successful execution. Activating stealth, he quietly walked on the wall, trying to catch up to his reptilian prey. He assured his stomach that they wouldn't have to wait long. They just need to get in the right position to strike, and the mission will succeed. Upon getting a closer look at the lizard's spikes, he knew that getting stung by one of those would be mortifying. But he can't start thinking fearfully now. Fear is the mind killer, and his stomach is counting on him. He's prepared so much that he can't afford any distractions. The timing of his pounce will determine everything. Once his planned position had presented itself, Anthony did not waste a single second to attack. His stealth gave him the opportunity to spew out his acid shot from above, splashing it on one of the lizard's legs. Anthony was already celebrating inwardly as Phase 1 was a success. Getting out of stealth mode, the lizard was squealing in agony with its leg melted to the flesh and bone. When the prey finally saw the one responsible for its pain, Phase 2 came into full effect. He taunted the lizard, asking it if it really wanted to battle on the wall, an action that was practically akin to courting death. Anthony's incredible grip still is already at level 3 after all the espionage he did. Neither the wall nor the lizard would be a challenge to him. Also, he has the natural advantage of being nimble and light while the beast is heavy and slow. With feet burning from the acid, maneuvering around the wall would be impossible. But the simple-minded beast was blinded by rage. It used its strong tail to try and shake down Anthony. With some extra force injected into the tail crash, the cavern's wall was wrecked while Anthony jumped out of his advantageous position for safety. Everything is going according to plan so far. He was practically playing with his food at this point. His next acid shot was aimed squarely at the lizard's face. Another melted wound, another session of writhing in pain on the ground. Quickly jumping through the cavern walls, Anthony adjusted his position to a safer and more advantageous spot. The roar of pain coming from the suffering lizard echoed throughout the pool. That's Anthony's cue to wrap this up quickly, as he can't let some other beasts end this fight that he has orchestrated. Succumbing to the corrosive injuries, the lizard was starting to slow down. It's nearly time for it to finally go bye-bye. But before all its strength was sapped out, the lizard actually got one more tail strike left to dish out. This one was beyond Anthony's expectations. The lunge and sudden tail slap caught him off guard. Thankfully, he was far enough to get a split second of space to react and dodge in a panic. With the lizard's final strength spent on a failed attack, Anthony's chance to end things once and for all has presented itself. From the top of the ceiling, he jumped down with his mandibles ready to chomp and hold. A loud and rough crunch filled the area near the pool. Anthony did not dare let go of the prey's rough skin, as now was the time for the final phase. The final phase is simple. It will be a battle of grit as he continues to apply biting pressure on the beast until they finally go on a free fall from the wall. Positioning the lizard below, he let the beast tank the fall damage while continuing his relentless bite. When the lizard finally stopped moving and resisting, he apologized for this is the rule of the world, and food is food. Anthony started spitting acid shots all over the lizard's body to help bypass its tough skin. In the process, the acid shot has also climbed to level 2. It was a quick level up. Inspecting the prey, he noticed that the poor thing wasn't dead yet. It looks like they'll have to take the next step the hard way. For both the prey and the predator, that is. Anthony mercilessly munched on the dying lizard's tough body, blood and guts staining the ground. The gruesome crunches filled the room. After some time, his bite climbed up to level 3. It took him 10 whole minutes to do it, but the horrific job was finally done. After being reinvigorated by the sustenance, Anthony felt like a daredevil that had just hunted. He felt like a knight fresh from his latest death-defying battle. He came, he saw, he conquered type thing. He literally gobbled up the enemy after the win. Now that he's thinking about it, he realizes that he's never worked this hard for something. No, he never pushed himself for anything in his past life. Looking back at how he lived, he mostly remembers feeling numb all the time. But now, he has defeated a level 2 Spinetta Lacertos, reaching level 2 with the XP drop. An additional skill point has been awarded. Gandalf was suddenly so talkative with all the notifications. So, this lizard is a Spinetta Lacertos, a name that sounds vaguely Latin. This was not his first encounter with Latin characters. His species assignment has him labeled as Formica. Recalling his ant-keeping hobby, Formica should be the Latin name for woods ants. If every creature in this world has a Latin name, then his book smarts will undoubtedly come in handy. Aside from that revelation, he also learned 3 very important things regarding his situation. First, he can gain experience to increase his level after defeating other creatures. Second, he can earn a new precious skill point to allocate at every level up. And third, since this Spinetta thing was a level 2 monster, he can assume 2 more conjectures. The lizard was either born at level 2 or it managed to level up once. More importantly, he can't possibly forget what he came here to do, and that is to claim the body of his prey to strengthen his own. As a hunter, a predator, he must eat and get stronger, consume the flesh of the strong and the weak. Anthony was grateful for the food, don't get him wrong, but the taste of the lizard meat was far from appetizing. It was wretched to the point of inducing another throwing up session. But now that he has consumed meat from a new source of biomass, he has been awarded 1 point. Gandalf just kept on yapping to him today. Lying down in the cavern, his stomach grumbles were replaced with loud burps. He should be set when it comes to food for the next week, at the very least. Aside from the satisfaction of a full belly, he also has another bonus harvest from Gandalf. For now, it's time to retreat to his nest while formulating his next move. Once he reached the top of the cavern, Anthony looked down on the beasts below. They were completely obsessed with the pool's water. They don't even know that one of their neighbors has gone missing. After several minutes of scurrying around later, Anthony finally arrived at his humble nest, touching his hands together like an evil mastermind as it was time to plot another plan. First, let's have a quick check on his updated status after the hunt. His stats are pretty much the same, but his skills have grown tremendously. He couldn't help but feel like a lone ant going on a thrilling adventure and experiencing incredible growth. Even against the crash of destiny and all the unforeseen circumstances, he'll still prevail. Against all odds, he will survive, no matter how stacked it is against him. But that's enough daydreaming for one day. He needs to get down from the clouds and be realistic now. Shaking his head from left to right, Anthony locked in on the present. Right now, he needs to make another pivotal decision, and it requires him to be prudent. He only has 2 biomass points to spend, so he'll have to consider all the options carefully. His gaze kept on going to the same place, his eye mutation. He wanted to evolve his eyes to +2 for the love of the blessed light. When Gandalf's voice asked him if he wanted to spend 2 biomass points to reach the next level, Anthony did not hesitate to confirm. He really could not get used to the abrupt effect of burning his eyes out for the sake of improvement. He hated the burn so much. After a while, his eyes were watering from the pain, but it was finally over. His current vision is still far worse than the average human's eyesight, but it will have to do for now. Now he has to spend his single skill point. Luckily, this decision wouldn't be too hard as he already had a skill in mind for some time now, and that skill is called tunnel sense. He's been in this cursed place for a few days now, but he's still clueless about most of its aspects. There are just too many unknowns in this world, so tunnel sense could be vital for his long-term survival. Using this new ability, he can essentially broaden the range of his every action. It would allow him to explore farther than his comfort zone while still being secured to make it back to his only place of relative safety, his nest. When Gandalf asked for confirmation, Anthony happily obliged with a smile on his little face. Obtaining a new skill felt wildly different from the pain of the body modification process. He described it as feeling like water running through his hair in a shower, except it was flowing and happening deeper inside his head. After a few moments, Gandalf informed him that tunnel sense had been learned. He could only hope that it would show how effective it was in his next exploration mission. Anthony gathered some leaves from the cavern and fashioned them into a bed. Before his next exploration, he rightfully deserves a nice and comfy nap. While he was slumbering, the sound of human footsteps was closing in. 2 figures that looked to be human were traversing a dense forest with a single source of light. The woman asked the man if he saw something. He assured her that it was nothing. It's just that his mind has been playing tricks on him lately. Besides, wherever they are going, any monster that would try to threaten them would be in for a very rude awakening. With his belly no longer bothering him with hunger, Anthony felt like he was sleeping on cloud 9 in pure bliss. It was so comfortable that he wished to stay in this place forever. But his paradise of a dream was interrupted when he was jolted awake. He managed to roll out of his bed and planted face first into the hard ground below. In hindsight, he should have seen it coming. Dreams like that are always too good to be true. But it gave him the clarity to forego lingering on unobtainable things. It's time to focus on exploration and mapping out a plan for his next prey. Anthony the ant snickered deviously. Before doing all the busy work, there was something else that he wanted to try. Using his antennae as a makeshift heart symbol, he yelled "unlock" inside his mind like a magical girl. When that didn't work, he tried the keywords access profile. He thought about using Gandalf's example through using Open Sesame like the movies, but didn't even bother trying. He really thought that one of those would work to accomplish what he was trying to do. After consuming the lizard, Gandalf informed him that he had unlocked a basic profile of the Spinetta Lacertos, but he was struggling to find the right keyword to access the damned thing. It only occurred to him now that maybe he's been overthinking the entire process a little too much this whole time. So, he loosened his grip from his nest's ceiling, falling to the floor and yelling the Latin name of the lizard while making a superhero landing. Surprisingly, it worked. The whole basic profile of his first prey has been opened for him to read. Gandalf really has his back in times like this. Spinetta Lacertos can be translated to thorn lizard. It has sharp spines that contain dangerous venom. After all the trouble that he went through, that tiny tidbit of info was the only thing he got. It was very disappointing, but Anthony needs to get a grip. It already stated that it's just a basic profile after all. Perhaps the system works gradually. If he hunts and consumes more of the same species, he might be able to access a more detailed profile with more useful information. He chose to shove that matter away for now. He has more pressing matters to attend to as it's time to pursue his next task. His trip back to spy on the residents of the pool felt a lot lighter as he sang while traversing the ceiling. Another day, another monster to make a prey. From the looks of it, it seems like not much has changed since he returned to his nest after feasting. He noticed a tiny difference from before, though. With his newly improved +2 eyes, the pool below seems to be glowing slightly brighter than it did in the past. What he's most curious about in this predicament is related to the pool and its water. On his first day in this place, he almost became a snack for the croca beast, yet all the running didn't make him thirsty. On day 3, he found the leaves for his makeshift bed, and he didn't feel thirsty either. Day 6, when he finally gorged himself with lizard meat, and he still didn't crave a drop of water. While all these monsters come out of their way to drink from the pool, Anthony, an ant monster himself, has not felt thirsty at all. He was supposed to be a monster too, right? So, what compels the other cavern residents to drink the water when he personally doesn't have the urge to do so? Is there something fundamentally different about them or himself? With those questions in mind, Anthony already knows what he has to do next. He scurried down from the ceiling to finally investigate the mysterious water of the pool and live to tell the tale. It could be incredibly dangerous to go down there, so it's wise to take baby steps first. Even in the face of the dangerous centipede lump, he must remind himself not to go too far and too fast. Observing the beasts around, there really is a large proportion of lizard-like creatures in this damp place. There's the bipedal croca beast and the spiked lizard. Every beast has some sort of reptilian feature in their anatomy. Maybe it's some kind of pattern. While he was lost in thought, he failed to notice that a wolf lizard was curiously and furiously coming his way. Just as it was about to pounce on Anthony, the dog started retreating nervously, confusing our ant boy. Looking behind, it seems like the wolf lizard was wary of the towering centipede. Anthony was lucky enough to avoid the wolf lizard's attention, but the centipede beast is another story. Their whole tribe slithered and hissed like disgusting overgrown mutated insects. Their crimson gaze focused on a lone ant. Judging from their refrain to take action, Anthony thanks the gods that his hypothesis was right. You might be wondering why the survival-minded ant would risk coming into the open in the pool area right about now. Well, there's only one reason why he would expose himself in front of these monsters that could kill him in a split second. With his days of observing the behavior of the residents, he has never witnessed a creature approaching, drinking, or leaving the pool area be attacked, not even once. It's like a neutral zone of some sort. Now, there are plenty of conflicts during those scouting days for the lizard, but the monsters always take their disputes outside the pool area. In conclusion, there must be something special about this water force to compel the monsters to hold back. And Anthony was positive that it didn't have anything to do with just simple hydration. He knows he can't avoid it out of sheer curiosity, but he really doesn't want to drink the pool water. Anthony just steeled his resolve, closed his eyes, and dunked his face into the pool to drink some of the mysterious water. His immediate reaction was to jump out and roll over, for the water burned like hell on his tongue. The portion that he managed to swallow lit a fire in his insides. It felt like drinking hydrochloric acid for some unknown reason. Is this really what these myriads of creatures have been coming here for? Are they really going to this place every day for this painful, burning water of death? If so, then what the hell is wrong with all of them? Was Anthony reborn inside a cavern full of masochistic monsters? He still couldn't shake off the feeling that he was missing something. Aside from the burning sensation, there was virtually no change to his health. Based on its blockbuster appeal, he was expecting something spectacular to happen, since all these monsters seemingly obsessed over some pool water for days on end. But to him, it had no effect. Nothing at all. Since he had done what he came here to do, he just decided to explore the rest of the cavern elsewhere. Before doing that, he just can't resist going for one more sip. This time, he slurped as hard as he could, taking in as much liquid as his tiny body could handle. Just like before, it really freaking burns. He had to roll all over the floor, spitting out what he just ingested out of sheer pain. Throwing up the majority of the pool water, he decided that it was nothing but horrible stuff. He made a mental note to himself to never try that thing again, no matter what. Now that he has somewhat investigated the mystery of the pool water, it's time to expand his exploration of the rest of the cavern to map the cave network using his new tunnel sense. With his newly acquired ability, traveling has become simple. All he has to do is head towards the regions where the light veins are densest. Aside from that, he unexpectedly started smelling something from a distance. It made him question just what sorts of other creatures lurk within these strange tunnels. After picking through his brain while constantly on the move, he accidentally stumbled upon something quite familiar. A man-made structure designed to bridge a large vertical distance between lower and higher levels by dividing it into smaller vertical distances. Those are unmistakably stairs. Looking down the length of the stairs, Anthony noticed that the winding blue lines were also present. Out of curiosity and excitement, he hurriedly made his way into the descent to take a closer look. It appears as if these stairs have been carved directly into the rock. There's even some intricate ornamentation on every step. Now, who exactly would be responsible for carving solid rock? That is the question that he enthusiastically asked himself. Why, humans, of course. This was the first tangible evidence that he had come across that any sort of humanoid creature existed in this new world. He couldn't help but wonder what sort of fantasy people live in this place. Anthony daydreamed of saving the mighty dwarves from a power that threatened their very existence. Or maybe he'll encounter the legendary and mystical elves known for their longevity and beauty. No matter what he encounters, he has to admit that things are getting more and more interesting. He was halfway down the stairs when he started asking himself why humans would bother to carve stairs into this particular tunnel and not the other ones. Well, for a self-proclaimed genius like himself, the answer is almost self-explanatory. This path he was walking on must be a frequently used tunnel. Therefore, they've made some effort to make it more convenient to travel down and up on. This means that there is a high likelihood that there are more stairs in the immediate area. Perhaps there's even a path to the surface where he could exit this miserable cavern filled with danger. That possibility gave Anthony the courage to take the next step. Here goes nothing. As he traverses the downward spiral, he realizes that these stairs are even more useful than he initially thought. He couldn't believe that he didn't think of this idea sooner. He can actually use these stairs to measure himself. Assuming that people in this world are roughly the same size as those in his old one, then he could compare his own size to the stairs. He could make a rough estimate of how large he is using those variables. Upon crunching the numbers, Anthony concluded that he might be a little smaller than he initially thought. Judging by the height and length of each step relative to his physique, he should be about a meter tall. But wait, this means that all those terrifyingly massive monsters in the pool would be fairly small from the perspective of a human. Sure, in Anthony's eyes they look like giants that could stomp out their enemies easily. But from an adult human's perspective, they're probably the same size as normal animals in the old world. This brings Anthony to question the difficulty of the monsters in this area. Could they actually be super weak, tutorial monsters in easy mode? But that line of thought opens up a more terrifying possibility. If the monsters in this place are weak, he doesn't even want to know what other stronger monsters are lurking deeper within. On that note, he had decided not to head straight into his death this time around. It's farewell to the dangerous staircase for now. But upon getting off on a different floor, Anthony noticed even more signs of human activity. There were torches on the walls. The farther he travels, the more signs of civilization present themselves. Perhaps the surface is closer than we think. He went deeper into the tunnel. The farther he got, the fewer pulsating veins of light along the walls were visible. Although this setup was perfect for a stealthy creature like him, he just couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, something was off. His heart was literally pounding in his chest, trying to break free with a mixture of emotions. There's a very real possibility of meeting a real person from another world. Isn't that exciting? He already has so many questions lined up in his mind. What do they look like? What fantastical race will they be? Would they know magic? Maybe there's some sort of adventure guild that explores dungeons. Maybe he'll be able to communicate with them through sign language or some form of interpretative dance. Anthony's mind was flying all over the place, and he was already envisioning the breakthrough in ant and human relations on the largest scale. He was fairly certain that it's not often that humans encounter the mind of one of their own trapped in a monster's body. It's possible that he's the first of his kind. As he ventured deeper into the cavern, it started becoming narrower and the slope steeper. It didn't take too long for a blinding light to cover his blurry eyesight. Looking above, there's a hole in the cavern ceiling, and if he wasn't mistaken, sunlight was coming in from above. It's the first time that he's seen and feeling the sun. He apologized to the holy light for taking this luxury for granted back in his previous life. With the discovery of sunlight, he concluded that the surface and the outside world were a lot closer than he originally thought. Looking in the other direction, there seemed to be more sources of light ahead, meaning there should be more human construction. Before even finishing that thought, Anthony happened upon a partially opened wooden door. Judging from the design of the structure, he thinks that it might be a guard room in the middle of some dungeon. But the more curious thing was the red light emanating out of the guard room window. This light was different because it was moving along the sound of scrambling footsteps. Who would have thought that it was humans? Real humans clad in light armor and holding some kind of lighting device. Anthony just stood there, amazed at their device that could possibly detect the presence of monsters. Because of how dark these caverns are, it must be hard to traverse and find what they're looking for. While the woman held the device, the man started emanating a magical light in both of his hands. It felt unreal to watch it in real time, but Anthony reckons that this was magic. Real magic. He praised Gandalf for bringing him to a world of magic. He's already wondering if these people would teach him some spells or something. While our boy was foaming at the mouth with the possibilities, the man started aiming his arms in Anthony's direction. Wait, wasn't that red crystal supposed to detect a monster? That must mean that it's active right now. Because he got so caught up in the moment that he forgot that he's also a monster, Anthony was put in a spot where a magical spell has been locked onto him. He's dead meat. It wasn't supposed to go down this way, right? He just made a mistake. But the only prudent decision to make right now was to scurry away like a bug. Run, Anthony, run! He tries to plead mercy from the humans, but he doesn't have the capability to speak. To make matters worse, he tripped on a loose piece of rock on the way to his escape. Anthony wanted to express that he was just a tiny and harmless ant, but the fireball made of mana was already closing in on him. He wasn't hit directly, but his legs were sore from tripping and running. His mind says move, but his legs say otherwise. Trapped and immobile, even more fireballs launched towards the poor ant. He had to muster every remaining fiber of willpower in his muscle to make the next run, using the columns as his cover. Even using cover was useless. In another angle, a single arrow almost pierced his abdomen. If he wants to make it out of this pinch alive, then he's going to need an effective distraction. But first, he must secure an exit route to safety. He shuffled through the random tunnels, using his tunnel sense to judge whether the path was feasible or not. Upon going through 3 pathways, Anthony came upon one with a god-awful stench emanating from within. The humans were already upon him, so he decided to fight like a monster and squirted a 2-way acid shot for each of them. It didn't delay the 2 effectively. It just made them retaliate with another arrow. Anthony was getting good with his reflexes, dodging the whistling arrow by ducking. What's for sure was that his attempt at the human and ant monster relations had just gone up to smoke. Multiple fireballs desperately chased after the lone ant, as if they're some kind of homing missiles. Anthony had been running for so long that he lost sight of the surroundings, bumping into a protruding rock. But thanks to Gandalf's blessings, he managed to survive and catch a breather inside a tiny tunnel. Realizing what had just happened, he started beating himself up for being so stupid with how he handled the situation. He failed to remind himself that he's not human anymore, and with that, his human privileges have been revoked too. From now on, he needs to take the fact that he's a 1-meter-long monster ant into account in every interaction with others. On the other side of the small tunnel, menacing hissing sounds could be heard. He might have messed up earlier, but he needs to snap out of it immediately. Anthony needs to think about what's better for him right now. Face the hissing centipedes on the other side, or the fireballs from the humans behind. But when the man that kept on chasing him with fire ominously poked his head through the tiny tunnel, it looked like his choice had already been made for him. Anthony hit the gas and started running for his life as another batch of fireballs started condensing on the man's hand. Thankfully, he was fast enough to disappear into the darkness before the spell was finished. Using tunnel sense, he expertly traversed the narrow pathways of the underground tunnel, sensing that the centipede clump was not far off. He psyched himself up with an impromptu plan. All he has to do is use the centipede beasts as bait for the humans. Fortunately for him, he has stealth at his disposal to hide his presence from the repulsive lump of dangerous noodles. He reckons that he could use acid spray as a surefire way to piss these insects off, but what comes after that would determine his fate. Escaping the angry horde would be the ultimate race against time, and he's doubtful whether he could pull it off or not. Deactivating his stealth mode, he knew that he didn't have any other options available. So, it's now or never, do or die. He carefully aimed his rear end at the clump and started spewing his corrosive acid shot on the beasts. It was an expertly aimed scatter shot that hit just about every centipede in the clump equally, but an acid shot just wasn't powerful nor corrosive enough to go through the horde's bodies. That's fine though, he wasn't hoping to kill them anyways, but he achieved what he was trying to achieve. He pissed off the lump of deadly centipedes. They immediately went after our poor ant boy with their endless legs for days. Now the race against time has officially begun. Several minutes of intense running later, Anthony was already crying because of the mess that he's tangled with. Getting to the entrance of the tunnel system was just taking so damn long. At this rate, his stamina will run out before he can execute the bait plan. Along the way, there are even some close calls of almost getting devoured as centipedes lunged at him with their powerful bites. Seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, Anthony hit a second wind. On the other side of this thing, salvation is waiting. Like a deranged insect, he leaped out of the tiny tunnel where the man was waiting for him to come out to get charred to bits. The man wasn't expecting that it would be an oversized insect party, as the centipede horde also escaped from the hole like sickening trains. Anthony made a safe landing with all the commotion happening. All that was left to do was make his escape. But that's easier said than done when a horrific crawling beast has been pissed off to chase him to the ends of the globe. Running would be of no use now. He just tucked his body in and repeatedly chanted that he didn't want to die. As if Anthony's desperate chanting reached the ears of a god, the centipede lobsters started blowing up before getting to him. Who was blowing up and cutting up the giant centipedes, you ask? Well, the humans on the other side of the tunnel were just trying to catch an ant. Anthony kept his head down, not daring to attract attention and violence in his direction. He wonders if this is his chance to escape the chaos. He inwardly excused himself as he carefully crawled through the battlefield. It would have been a perfect escape if not for some of the straggler centipedes seeing and chasing after him like tenacious little critters. He was so preoccupied with what was happening behind him, only to bump against a human leg up front due to sheer carelessness. Anthony slid back before the human's twisting spear skewered him from above. Moreover, the spear strike supposedly aimed at him landed on the straggling centipedes hot on his trail. Once again, Anthony thanked Gandalf the system for giving him such bountiful luck. He has been spared repeatedly with a higher power's perfectly timed interventions. He would love to praise the bearded wizard more, but he is still in deep trouble. His luck would not be enough to stifle the two enemies trying to catch up from behind. Public enemy number 1, human male guard, and public enemy number 2, centipede beast. After gaining some distance amidst all the anarchy, Anthony manages to activate his stealth. He plans his next move. Where can he hide in this place? He saw an open doorway leading to God knowing where and decided it would have to be done for now. He managed to secure a hiding spot using his stealth ability and sneaky movements. Behind the walls of the doorway, he observed the war between humans and centipedes that he started. He feels terrible about pitting his fellow monster against human guards, but the situation has left him with no other choice. It was between either dying at the end of a human blade and exploding with human magic, or letting his neighbors wage war against the guards. Meanwhile, in the quiet city of Lyria, the diligent Commander Titus is in his office, working until late at night. The lines on his face deepened due to stress because some damned fools just can't leave the dungeon situation to him and his legion. If it were up to the old commander, he would be out 24/7 in the dungeon instead of cooped up in a dark office, burning candlelight with senseless paperwork. These days, his job has consisted of saying the same thing a million times to idiots who don't know right from left instead of getting a chance to swing his beloved weapon. He almost broke his desk in half out of frustration. That was the wake-up call to calm down and get some good mana-rich air for a moment. Getting out of the dimly lit office, the forward garrison troops outside stood up for the commander. Commander Titus did not acknowledge their presence. He just walked straight out of the halls. Another heavy door opened, and another batch of clean-cut troops stood in attention at their valiant leader. Everywhere he went, everyone would stop what they were doing. He was like a god in this place. The commander pushed through until he reached a simple wooden door with 2 armed guards on either side. Commander Titus demanded a rundown of the situation from Tribune Aurelia, and she diligently complied. 15 minutes ago, a monster approached this guard station before fleeing. The guard team signaled the centurion on duty before pushing deeper into the cavern. From the human guard's perspective, they were dealing with a grotesque ant monster. They were chasing after something that deserved to be killed with the hottest fire and the sharpest blade. Titus found that rundown weird. He confirmed if the monster did not attack head-on, but fled instead. He promptly turned to the unassuming wooden door, alarming Tribune Aurelia and asking where he was going. The commander casually answered that he was simply joining the suppression expedition personally. Commander Titus's interest is piqued by the accounts of a monster with enough intelligence to flee danger. Behind the wooden door, the guard was still busy fighting the intense war against the centipedes. The mages unleashed their best spells to burn the beasts. No matter how ferocious the centipedes were, they were no match against the power of mana. Anthony was trying to get to a better position, only to get locked in the middle of the pandemonium, with only his stealth ability to keep him safe. Anyone with eyes could see that this war of humans and beasts is not even a fight anymore. It's just some plain old slaughter at this point. Anthony was powerless, too powerless to add anything of value in this battle. It's not like he can mince enemies with a long-range mandible attack or anything like that. Clueless times like this always leads him to ask Gandalf what he's supposed to do. Instead of getting Gandalf's advice, he got a crispy slap from a familiar human figure. It was Human Anthony. He thanked Human Anthony for the much-needed wake-up call in desperate times. Looking on the bright side of things, this series of misadventures has confirmed so many things that he was curious about. First, it verifies the existence of magic in the form of human spells. Secondly, there exists a human society in this world. Also, a power gap between his ant self and the humans is there, and it's massive. Another lesson he learned is quite game-changing. For now, the king of attributes is HP. After getting blasted by stone shards and scorched by fireballs, his HP reached the critical point. He was down to 15 HP, which is practically half. But at least he finally figured out how much damage he would take in combat. The cost of that lesson is now that he will need to find a way to regenerate the missing hit points. Thinking of ways to get back to the green zone, he reckons that his HP will automatically recover over time. But it may have to be a little more complicated, and he will need to heal his wounds manually through some method. Either way, he can't just waste the golden opportunity that the war he started has presented in front of him. A near-endless number of beast corpses were laid down on the ground like a buffet. Some were even cooked by flames. For now, he needs to lock in as there is a mountain of biomass waiting to get devoured. Anthony acts on his most primal instinct to ingest those much stronger than him, getting stronger and packing on biomass with every second that passes. It took him quite a while to get from one side of the buffet to another, but his harvest was nothing short of bountiful. By the end of it all, he could barely move and breathe with how full he was. Throughout the whole process, he was just picturing a feast fit for a king, as Gandalf intended. In his mind, the centipedes were cooked correctly and dressed to be as appetizing as possible. But reality always hits once the meat hits his tongue and travels through his throat. There's no two ways about it. These centipede beasts taste abhorrently horrendous. Thinking about how much of this disgusting meat he had just consumed, Anthony could not help but throw up. Putting the taste aside, the biomass that he gained is more important. His feast for a king unlocked the basic profile of his prey, the Unguibus scolopendra. He opened the damned thing at once, and it was still useless as always. It just states that the claw centipede has a strong claw and a venomous spike in its tail. Before spending his hard-earned biomass, he wanted to take a look at his stats first. Everything has been progressing smoothly when it comes to skills and stats. Furthermore, his HP has started to slightly recover after some time. Now he has 2 biomass points to freely spend on anything. According to the Holy Book of the Path, the system shall uplift all beings, but only if the mortal kind is united will they be able to pursue its final destination. Plopping down in the comfort of his home, Anthony could finally relax after a hectic day. All he could do was pray to glorious Gandalf for a more peaceful time today. He is planning to accomplish 2 important tasks at hand. First is mutating his eyes to +3. He desperately needs 1 more biomass for that upgrade. To make sure that he doesn't slip up, he reckoned that moving his nest must come right after. After getting some much-needed rest, Anthony got to work. The moment he stepped out of the comfort of his nest, he saw the war of humans and centipedes still raging on. His perfect day just went up in flames. Nevertheless, the work is not going to finish itself. Staying hidden from view, Anthony crawled away from the fiery battlefield. He expertly traversed the caverns while in stealth. He wonders what these soldiers were even doing in this accursed place. They have been trying their hardest to eradicate every monster they come across. When he reached the mystical water pool, Anthony found that the human soldiers had taken over the area. He saw such fancy technology and funky crystals dangling on the water's surface and was enamored. Anthony shook his head and kept his mind on the game. This is not the time to marvel at magic at the cost of safety. As days go by, the dream of getting out of this place alive seems further and further away. It would be too conceited to think that he could sneak past a whole battalion as he is right now. Burrowing in his nest also comes with the possibility of getting raided. Realistically, there is only one viable option available at present. But without sufficient upgrades, that choice will certainly lead to an early demise. He might not even get an ant coffin. For now, the only path forward is a mortifying one, returning to his spawn point, the lair of the croca beast. For one last time, he gave an emotional farewell to the nest that kept him safe until now. He had great times inside that hole. If he only had some fellow ant bros to chill with, it would have been a real home. Speaking of ant bros, perhaps this is the perfect time to find his birth nest. If he could reunite with the colony and get together with his own kind, this life might not be too bad. After all, the beast that snatched him before birth could not have moved too far from his home nest. If he recalls the details correctly, the colony must be in one of the 3 burrows from his spawn point. Choosing to stay positive in the face of uncertainty, Anthony set forth. His ultimate goal is to find the queen and his ant bros. Maybe he could give his mother a hug when they reunite. Moving away from the pool and following the light, Anthony moved at full speed. He noticed that the veins lining the cavern walls had gotten brighter than before. Moreover, they are pulsating more frequently. It was a truly peculiar sight. When he reached the end of the veiny tunnel, he slowed down and carefully scouted ahead, hoping that no threats were waiting to pounce on him. After eyeballing the open space before him, he breathes a sigh of relief. He's on the clear for now. To find the most optimal path from here on out, Anthony activated tunnel sense. Mapping this mysterious place will take him away from the cursed surface and its nasty human armies. After a few minutes of tunnel scouting, his antennae began to pick up something. About 100 meters away from his current position, a distinct change in the air could be felt. Zeroing in on that change, he hyper-focused his antennae on its direction. He was so dead set on following the trail that he bumped his head on a wall. The signal continued forward, but there are 2 paths that might lead to it. Gandalf must be asking him to make the call and choose between the 2. After a preliminary scan and based on his intuition, both options seem pretty unfavorable. Left with no other choice, he dumped the biomass he had accumulated to upgrade his antennae for the sake of accuracy. Similar to upgrading his eyesight, this level up brought about a searing pain that left him rolling on the ground. He cursed cruel Gandalf for making him suffer for a slight increase in his chance of survival. With a more refined sense, he confirmed that one of the paths has a faint but promising scent. One of the trails felt less like instant death, so the choice was easy to make. After a lot of deliberation, Anthony pulled the trigger and pushed forward. His mantra for today is slow and steady wins the race. Halfway through the route, his antennae sprang up as elation filled his little body. He just sensed a whiff of pheromones. By using a pheromone gland, ants can lay a trail for other ants to detect and follow. This might be it. After surviving on his own for what felt like forever, his ant bros are finally calling him home. If he could just see what was waiting at the other side of the trail, he would not be celebrating at all. Webs of silk traps littered the place as a creature patiently waits for unwitting victims. Anthony moved like the wind as he followed what he perceived to be pheromones from his kin. He was absolutely hyped, thinking that the colony was calling him and lighting a beacon to bring one of their own home. Halfway through the journey, he checked himself. He can't afford to get carried away here. He still remembers the cost of being overzealous. His HP hasn't recovered to max yet. For now, he'll have to keep going down the unknown path until he can pick up a safer trail somewhere. As he advanced, he noticed that the tunnel itself had become more and more irregular. It was zigzagging in a bunch of random directions. While the route gets more chaotic, the vibrations in the air also grow stronger. His gut tells him that something's about to go down. Eventually, he reached a bottleneck. The tunnel split into a very messy network of paths. He was getting dizzy just trying to keep track of which ones were safe to pick. Thankfully, his day of running around the caves bore fruit. His tunnel sense has reached level 2, improving his ability to maintain a sense of direction underground. This skill is his most reliable tool in navigating the winding roads of the mysterious cave. To supplement his tunnel sense, Anthony plans to create and maintain a simple set of symbols to mark the routes he has already traversed. Hopefully, it will help. The first choice is always the toughest one, but he snap-picked the right-hand path. Going down this path wasn't as fortuitous as he thought it would be. The route was not that long, so he reached the clearing at the other end relatively quickly. Out there, he saw a bunch of rats with lizard tails gnawing on the bones of their unfortunate prey. Anthony turned his ant butt around on a dime and ran back to the previous room. He tried to catch his breath while thinking about his next move after the first one failed. Walking to the entrance of the rightmost route, he wondered what symbol would be fitting to emphasize instant death. Just to keep it simple, he scuttled up to the tunnel's ceiling and marked it with a simple X. Hopefully, going through the motions like this would eventually lead him to somewhere he could work with, somewhere a little more manageable. Going through the next tunnel, he felt safe, almost pleasant in fact. This feeling could get him killed. Thankfully, his instincts saved him from being complacent. While traversing the cavernous walls, he caught a glimpse of a spider web neatly laid and expertly hidden. Without his level 2 eyesight, he would have tripped over this trap for sure. He would not have noticed it in time. Walking headfirst into the enemy's territory would have been the end of his story. Frankly, Anthony was pissed. Those stupid spiders must think they are the king of the insect world just because they can set up something so elaborate to feed on others. The way he sees it, those freaks are a bunch of lazy bums that let their web do all the hard work instead of getting off their asses. He views the honest and straightforward worker ant as the pinnacle of honor. If he just had about 200 of his brothers in here to command, he would never cower against a spider. Words cannot express just how much hate he has for those web-slinging freaks. Deciding to press on to scout the situation up ahead, Anthony's pace slowed to a crawl. He sees the webs all over the place, but the architect is nowhere to be found. That doesn't mean it isn't nearby. Gathering information takes precedence for now. That's the best way to know the optimal path forward. Once he was out of the tricky sticky zone, he crawled back to the ground where the traps were thin. Using his mandible, Anthony broke off a loose pebble from the floor. With a little bit of wind-up, he flung that pebble up into the mass of spider webs, ruining the elaborate trap with one thwack. Seeing that rock throwing seemed like an effective way to clear the way, he continued flinging. Anthony picked up yet another pebble with his mandible and worked on his pitch. He was like the Shohei Ohtani of pitching rocks into webs. Once he cleared up enough webs to open a relatively safe path, he dashed forward. He knew that the architect of this death trap must be hiding nearby. By destroying the web structure and letting the pebbles stick to it, the monster will eventually surface. As expected, the arachnid freak finally showed its ugly mug. Right now, it must be thinking that lunch has arrived. It only took one look for Anthony to almost hurl at such a hideous thing. The thing had 8 furry legs that could hardly support its fat body. Compared to an ant's perfect 3 body segments and 6 functional limbs, spiders are simply an abomination. As far as Anthony knows, spiders are supposed to be lower on the food chain and roughly the same size as him. The one in front of him might not be a high-level monster. If this many-legged fiend could just sit still for a bit, he could accurately gauge the distance for a long-range attack. Wiggling his butt to perfect the aim, Anthony held until the very last second for maximum precision. Once he accounted for the wind and the placement, he shot his acid out. The nasty green goo squirted all over the hairy beast. Its effect was instantly felt. The hair and the flesh produced a gnarly hissing sound as they burned and melted. Unfortunately, even though he had some upgrades, his eyesight is no match for a regular spider yet. Luckily, he has stealth to make up for his deficiencies. He fumbled the first shot. The effects were nasty, but it only hit one of the spider's many legs. After that first assault, Anthony quietly followed the clueless spider. It clearly thinks it's safe in the shadows, but Anthony's stalking skills are top-notch. Once he got a better angle with the help of stealth, he fired the second acid shot with utmost confidence. This time, the substance hit the target squarely. The hissing sound grew louder as the spider melted alive. To add salt to the horrid wound, Anthony deactivated stealth and deliberately taunted the spider to chase after him. This is the only way he could separate the coward from its home court advantage. Despite all his shit-talking, Anthony admitted that he is shivering inside his carapace at the thought of the spider's inevitable rampage. At least he reached his safe zone before it could catch up. If worst comes to worst, maybe he could circle back to where the wolf lizard pack is hanging out. In doing so, he could let the spider and the wolves duke it out while he watches on the sidelines. In a perfect world, those dumb dogs would immediately shift their attention to the incoming many-legged freak as soon as he hides himself. If Anthony could slip away through that den and into safety, it would be, one might say, a perfect crime. Fortunately, he doesn't have to rely on a plan with too many uncontrollable variables. The pissed and injured spider appears to be as cautious as he is. It makes sense. Why would that fucker move when all it has to do is sit inside the web and wait for a stupid prey to be delivered on a silver platter? After a nice meal, that spider would undoubtedly heal back to full. Anthony envisioned himself as a spider. He could practically create a domain expansion where food would come to him, get trapped, and he could reap free biomass. He cursed spiders for being creatures in easy mode in this ruthless dungeon. His rage is reaching the skies. To ease his fury, Anthony decided that the spider must die sooner rather than later. A day has passed since the first encounter. Even though he is pissed, he still weighed the odds of winning meticulously. After much deliberation, he concluded that the odds are in his favor. Firstly, the tunnel is unusually bright, even though his eyesight is only at +2. The light makes it serviceable, and spotting the enemy will not be too difficult. Secondly, based on raw estimated stats, the spider and he seem evenly matched as long as he could take away the web advantage. With all these factors in mind, he could probably eat some new biomass and quell the anger in his heart if things go his way. The question remains, how exactly can he lure that freak out of the web? Phase 1 is already complete. With his 2 acid attacks from yesterday, he likely chunked that freak by about 5 HP. The safest way to go about this hunt is to continue harassing the arachnid, ambushing the poor guy multiple times until Anthony prevails. After all, one hit from those poison fangs could land him in hot water. With his antennae perked up and forward, eyes open, and brain solely focused on the hunt, Anthony set forth. He cannot afford to commit a single mistake. It did not take him long to reach the web-riddled path. He investigated every inch of the route and found no sign of the architect at first. Luckily, he stumbled upon a pile of spider eggs hidden nearby. It's a little bit cruel, but these things should be the best tool to lure that insect out of hiding. Reminiscent of the pebbles from yesterday, he started tossing the eggs up on the web. Hopefully, this convinces the spider that some juicy prey has been caught and entangled. Anthony kept going and tossing, not stopping until his mortal enemy showed itself. After tossing the last egg up on the web, all that's left to do is sit, wait, and observe. He hid behind a nearby rock with a clear sightline of the eggs. A few hours passed, and there were still no signs of that coward. It might have become too chicken shit after what happened last time. Just to be sure, he grabbed a pebble and tossed it right into the clump of stuck eggs. Seeing as his old trick was not working, he decided to move on to the second phase of his plan. This phase requires a little more finesse as opposed to brute strength. He picked up smaller loose pebbles from the ground, the kind that wouldn't shake or break the web, unlike the heavier rocks. Instead of tossing the tiny pebbles, he gently placed them along the web, barely causing any movement. Using this technique, he's planning to bypass the wall of the web silently. With enough coverage, he should be able to infiltrate the inner sanctum without tipping any alarms. Once he made a big enough gap using the silent tech, Anthony cautiously ventured deep into enemy territory. He's never been this deep into uncharted territories before. Utmost caution is required, for there could be hidden threads afoot. A single lapse of concentration can get him helplessly stuck. That type of mistake could be deadly. Just a few minutes after his supposedly silent infiltration, all his senses warned him of a threat coming from behind. The spider must have been spying on him the whole time. That dumbass was patient enough to wait for him to enter its home court, but it was stupid enough to approach from behind. Anthony opened the orifice in his butt and let one more acid shot loose. It was a critical hit. There's only one thing to do now to seal the deal. With a mocking laugh, Anthony ran out of that web-ridden territory while throwing scathing insults. He was feeling himself for real. He felt like he was one with the wind across the fjords, a gazelle leaving over the plains. Anthony had gotten way too cocky with himself and got snagged by a loose thread of web in midair. He tripped and landed face first on the ground, cursing himself for acting like an ass. Now, he might die before ever meeting his colony or even a singular fellow ant. Anthony started bawling his eyes out. He's way too young to die. He's not even a month old yet. He's been sobbing for a solid minute now, and nothing grim has happened. As it turns out, the loose thread was super easy to break out of. When he turned around, he spotted the big bad spider lying ass up on the ground, its abdomen still sizzling from the acid shot. He really overestimated this arachnid freak. Consuming his prey gave him a new source of biomass, the poor Aranea. As it turns out, it was a newborn spider monster. Anthony is a baby killer. The name fits. He's worried that biting into the little bit of meat won't even net him a single point of biomass. He admitted that the rage he directed at the poor insect was clearly very misplaced. After just a few blasts of acid, it had already croaked. With no way to recover immediately, its health pool had quickly shrunk to nothing. The experience he gained from the kill wasn't too hefty either. Much to his surprise, he gained 2 biomass points for unlocking a new species and eating its remains. With a much calmer cadence, he exited the web-ridden area while destroying the sticky obstacles along the way. Right now, level 3 eyesight is within realistic reach. With his vision out of the life-threatening range, he'll finally be able to concentrate on upgrading other aspects of his body. Maybe he'll be able to actually fight something without resorting to tricks. But he's getting ahead of himself. He can't afford to rely on wishful thinking. Anthony needs to sack it up and figure out how to grow into an adult ant. The most obvious method would be to accrue more EXP to level up. For that to happen, he needs to establish a place where he can safely hunt. As per usual, he heads deeper into the winding tunnels with stealth mode engaged. Not far from the spider's nest, he spotted an odd sighting, a massive crater going down for God knows how deep. It would be safe to assume that the deeper a spot is, the more dangerous it would be. If that's the case, maybe this place shouldn't be explored right away. Save it for later when he's more confident in his chances of survival. Worst case scenario, this is the only trail he can go into. Using his upgraded antennae, he tried to direct his tunnel sense downwards to gauge the danger level, but it simply went too deep to properly sweep. As long as he has a choice, he'd rather not pursue this ominous crater any deeper than necessary. This thing might as well be a dead end, but so is the land above. The certain threat of certain death in the hands of humans looms above. Anthony is basically sandwiched between 2 extremely dangerous choices. It's a migraine-inducing conundrum. Since he'll have to explore all options in the end anyway, he'd rather double back and check some other routes. After skittering his way around the crater, he came upon a few splitting tunnels nearby. In this place, more paths usually mean more monsters to deal with. A few more hours of exploring made Anthony question himself. He suspected that he had just gone on a loop, and the tunnel he chose was just linking back to the first one he came from. This time, he encountered a few more new species on the way to finding the right route. Every time he reaches uncharted territories, he routinely checks for sections of walls he can work with. After feeling around and making sure that the spot he picked had enough structural stability, his mandibles got to work to dig a temporary nest to rest in. With this new hole he can hide in, he'll have some semblance of protection from the outside world. Even if it's flimsy and hastily done, it's better than shacking up outside where threats are everywhere. This time he did not dig too deeply. He chose a spot where he can establish a spy nest from above with perfect vision of what's happening on the ground. Making this new nest unexpectedly upgraded his digging skill to level 4. Anthony was very pleased with himself. Even if the skill is fairly useless in combat, it's good to know that he's improving in some respects. Thinking back on his limited time in this dungeon, he's quite proud of his vast improvement. He's still a little monster, but he's come a long way compared to when he started. His skills have leveled up after honing them in tricky situations and close calls. Admittedly, he's still pathetically weak in combat compared to other species, but he's just getting started. Now, if he wants to explore this new foreign area and terrain, he'll need to get some rest to stay on top of his game. Anthony raised insects in the past. He knows that ants don't typically sleep. They simply stay still, entering a state of reduced physiological activity called torpor for energy conservation. Even so, he liked the feeling of metaphorically closing his eyes without actually having eyelids to close. Maybe it's a remnant of his human habits. After a full night's rest, Anthony's mind was refreshed, and peak performance was reached. Now it's time to continue his exploration into the unknown. His goal for today is to secure one more biomass point to improve his eyesight. After that, he can finally experiment with the rest of his body. Theoretically, he can focus on more powerful legs, carapace, mandibles, or acid gland. Any of these upgrades would make it a lot more comfortable and secure when hunting. With kills come EXP to gain more levels. An increase in his stats would practically contribute to his progress into becoming an adult ant. Stealth is already at level 3. Hopefully, it can level up further by shadowing some new monsters in the area. Unfortunately, his first turn led him to a marked tunnel. It looked just like the path extending from the cavern he had already passed. This time, he certainly circled around just to put himself near the area where the soldiers had congregated. Looking at the bright side, he already has a rough map of this area forming in his mind. It consists of larger main tunnels and smaller ones twisting off in random directions. To put it into perspective, the larger ones serve as highways where the biggest threats gather and move around, while the smaller ones serve as the back streets where weaker foes nest. Anthony already wasted a lot of time with just one wrong turn. His day had started on a bad note. With a more thorough understanding of the area, he made a more informed decision this time around. Hopefully he can find what he's looking for in this track. He was so locked in on finding new sources of biomass that he didn't even realize that his tunnel sense had climbed to level 3. Trying to map the tunnels with more accuracy must have funneled a lot of EXP into tunnel sense. It feels a little weird to think that the system can monitor his thoughts. Near his temporary nest, he took note of 2 new monster types lurking nearby. The first is the 3-tailed rat, each tipped with a deadly spike. These rodents are freaky. The second is a mollusk-looking creature with a long, slimy body and brightly colored organic spines. He would bet money that these slimy bastards are poisonous in some way. They are at least twice his size and are capable of moving up walls. It would be wise to avoid their nasty trails just to be safe. While he was deliberating what to target for his next hunt, Anthony heard the faint and sweet sound he'd been hoping for. Chaotic noises of growling beasts and gnashing claws were coming from a tunnel just up ahead. Energized by the thought of opportunity, he sped up onward like a shadow fox. Since he's been gifted with a bizarre game-like system, he intends to find out how it exactly functions, and all its intricacies. He has a few questions in his mind. How does the system award EXP when a monster dies? Is it divided evenly amongst everyone that caused damage, or is EXP awarded solely to the one who deals the last hit? From what he had observed thus far, he had never received a system announcement of EXP gain during combat. That message always comes after the prey has expired. It practically confirms that EXP only drops upon the death of a foe. To answer all these questions floating in his mind, he'll have to test a few theories. Thankfully, a perfect scenario has presented itself. The chaotic sounds he heard came from an all-out war against a croca beast and an army of centipedes. Swearing upon the shining beard of Gandalf, Anthony hates those stupid centipedes from the bottom of his heart. They crowd around, thinking they're so great. By the looks of it, the croca beast is not going down without a fight, though. He's already taken down a few of those nasty bastards. The reptile is doing its best to watch and respond to each opponent. He has the strength and speed to rip the gnarly monsters apart, but the centipedes are too slippery. With a front row seat to watch the fight, Anthony is happy to chip into this fight he has no business being involved in when the chance presents itself. As soon as he saw one of the centipedes shaken and slow down, the croca beast lunged forward. Simultaneously, Anthony got ready to pitch in. Just a split second before the reptile could rip the centipede apart, he squirted a thick acid shot for a critical hit. The pain of being melted by acid completely disabled the centipede, making it an easy prey for the croca beast's lethal biting force. Like a starving predator, the reptile did not let go as soon as he established a death grip on his prey. In striking so boldly and hungrily, the croca has left himself open to retaliation. Continuing to hide in the ceiling, Anthony watched as the 3 remaining centipedes spread out at different angles to take advantage of their comrade's death. The first one to strike strangled the reptile from behind, coiling around its neck to cut off its breathing. This would have been a lethal attack if the centipede had established a strong enough grip right away. Unfortunately, it was swept away by the reptile's tail. Now that they know that the tail is a weapon that must be neutralized, the other 2 centipedes tried to take it out of the equation. They were too naive to think that they could disable the croca beast's most effective and flexible beatstick. While the many-legged freaks take all the aggro, Anthony sneakily squirted an acid shot squarely on the reptile's back. With his acid burning and the poison it accumulated from a prolonged fight against centipedes, the big bad reptile was moving slower and slower. On the other hand, the acid-burnt centipede had run out of the croca's range to play extra defensively. Anthony watched the war with a smug laugh. He felt like a puppeteer making stronger creatures dance in his palms. For his third sneaky acid shot, he targeted the ailing centipede one last time. Normally, Anthony would never dare act so brazenly. But with the centipede hunt leaning toward success, he got the space to intervene from afar. He highly doubts that these freaks would abandon such juicy prey for a little ant. Even though the croca beast is slowly fading due to its litany of injuries and the poison damage, the centipedes played it safe and continued to wait it out before dealing the last tick of damage. They retreat every time the reptile steps forward. Their victim is clearly showing signs of rapid decline. It will lose its strength to fight back any moment now. Even so, the proud croca beast continued trying to take even just a single insect with him to the grave. With labored breath, it gathered its remaining strength for one final burst forward. It was a clumsy attempt to kill one more, but the insects were prepared to thwart him. Squeezing the thinning juice left in the tank, the croca managed to close the gap one last time. With utmost murderous determination, it set its eyes on the slowest centipede of the bunch. Using his claw to extend the range as much as possible, he managed to snag one of them critters. Unfortunately, the acid on its back had corroded the scales and flesh. The pain from the poison running in his veins was too much. The absolute unit no longer had enough power behind his strikes. He fell on the ground, the impact reverberating throughout the cave. Anthony could feel his heart pounding in his tiny ant thorax. This is the perfect scenario for him. Now he just needs to take aim and deal the last hit using the last load of his acid. Seeing as the centipedes are starting to slowly crawl to claim their prize, this shot has to count. A greedier ant would have gone for the croca beast. It was obvious that it would make the biggest EXP gain. But Anthony was more realistic. He targeted the slowest injured centipede. Doubling down the acid damage on that many-legged freak, it wriggled in pain as it slowly succumbed to the deadly agony. As Anthony expected, the other centipedes ignored their dying comrade. They were laser-focused on feasting upon the dead reptile. With one less kin to share the meat with, they gladly tore the reptile meat apart, spilling its blood and guts. Since he didn't get a system announcement for killing the croca beast, this pretty much confirmed that only the final blow matters when it comes to gaining EXP. Thankfully, he had a clean kill on the level 3 claw centipede. It granted him an abundance of points, skyrocketing him to level 3 and granting 1 skill point. The croca beast must have dealt about 80% of the damage to that thing, but Anthony reaped the whole reward. After happily reading through his harvest, he noticed that the rest of the centipede flock had wriggled out of wherever they came from to smooch off the ones who did the work. Anthony's biggest upgrade was arguably the level up of his stealth skill to level 5. He could not help but praise the great Gandalf for bestowing such rich bounty. His wisdom, supple facial hair, and aggressive eyebrows are truly praiseworthy. Let's zoom out and see what's going on in the surface world of humans. Alberton, the lore master of Legiohem from Abyssi, Lyria, once studied the monster waves that started during the cataclysm known as the Rending. Today, lore master Alberton is on his way to a very important meeting in the royal castle. Accompanied by Commander Titus, they casually bantered. It sounded like these two have known each other for a long time. Alberton was quite prickly today, clearly annoyed that he had to attend the meeting. He sees the agenda for today. A formal call to arms before the entire court is never just a normal meeting. Commander Titus admitted that everything was arranged by Alberton's dearest aunt. The lore master wasn't too fond of facing that woman. Commander Titus praised him for growing into such a brave and principled legionary. With respect, he jokingly warned the old man to watch his tongue. Titus reminded him to refer to him accordingly. He's still a commander after all. The two chuckled amongst themselves. They clearly have a long history together. As soon as they arrived at the gate where the meeting was supposed to take place, they came across a young man hurrying out. The young man paid respects to the two prominent figures and escorted them into the inner sanctum. As the door opened, the atmosphere shifted. In a hall lit by the glow of the setting sun, some of the most important figures of the land have gathered. At the end of the hall was a woman sitting on an ornate throne. Commander Titus of the Deep Legion and Lore Master Alberton were welcomed with utmost fanfare and respect. They walked straight towards the woman sitting on the throne with their backs straight and solemn expressions. Those who arrived earlier had mixed reactions to their arrival. One particular person, an absolute baddie, turned around to give them a wink. Commander Titus looked at the stoic Alberton and sighed. They paid proper respects to the woman in charge, and she gave the legionaries a warm smile and permission to be at ease. She was glad to see her nephew after such a long time. Alberton had buried himself in study for far too long to avoid the stuffiness of royal life. Commander Titus knew that the Queen had called this meeting partly because she wanted to drag the idiotic lore master out of his cave to get scrubbed up. With everyone present, the Queen formally began the meeting. She gathered representatives from many of the kingdom's prominent cities. She intends to discuss the activities within the dungeon and the course of action they must take from this point forward. To begin, the most qualified man to talk about this subject is none other than Commander Titus. He iterated that mana levels within the dungeon are climbing quickly. According to his team's projections, the kingdom can expect a wave to break in the first strata in as little as 3 days, maybe 4. In addition to this, legionaries on guard have witnessed a monster ant emerging close to the surface. A cause for alarm. Due to the special nature of this creature and the grim implications of its presence, tensions have risen, and anxiety levels are rising. The Legion is setting a plan in motion to advance deeper into the dungeon. They intend to find and exterminate the monster ant colony before it's too late. In order to facilitate this level of operation, Commander Titus formally requested military aid from the throne to bolster their numbers. They desperately need assistance in securing the city from the upcoming wave. They also need to free Legion resources to fully commit to delving into the creature's nest. Commander Titus was clear and succinct with his messaging, but it was met with deafening silence. After a brief pause, barely hidden laughs and disrespectful discussions clearly mocking the old commander filled the room. Breaking the rude atmosphere, the winking baddie from earlier stepped forward to speak her mind. The Queen wasn't laughing. She looked sharp as ever when she allowed Corin to speak. Given permission, Corin stated that for over 100 years, the city of Lyria has prospered under the enlightened rule of Queen Verita and her forebears. Every citizen of this city enjoyed a peace that is seldom seen, even in the millennia following the Great Cataclysm. During this era of peace, the responsibility of managing dungeon activity has been exclusively placed into the hands of the Deep Legion. Even though dungeon diving has become one of Lyria's central economic cornerstones, a lot of people see the Legion as an overbearing and resource-hungry force. As usual, Commander Titus and his Legion are now begging for more assistance to defend the city, proving their inability to meet obligations despite their pre-existing lion's share of funds. The Queen did not appreciate Corin's blatant attack, so she implored her to get to the point. Corin represents the Mercenary Union, and once again, she wants to petition the throne to allow her organization direct authority over dungeon access. She would like to properly administer the existing resources and promise to police and manage her own people better than the Legion. She already has the support of the Associated Merchants Guild. The Guild's representative, a fishman, shared that their projections estimate that placing regulations around dungeon exploitation would double the kingdom's profits within 2 years. Queen Verita cut them off and denied Corin's request for the nth time. She did not take too kindly to Corin's implied dismissal of the threat that an ant represents. The Queen suggested that everyone in this room brush up on their history lessons. The land on which their beloved city was founded once belonged to another prosperous kingdom. As its current ruler, this queen will not repeat the mistakes of those rulers by underestimating the dungeon. She reminded everyone that the dungeon is not a resource, nor a mine to be exploited. It is a threat and should always be treated as such. Utmost caution is imperative. The Deep Legion liberated this land all those years ago. For that reason, the rulers of Lyria will continue to place their trust in them. Corin argued that the future prosperity of this land and its people is more concerning than its ancient history. She firmly believes that the dungeon is to be respected but never feared. Ignoring her ignorant counterpoints, Queen Verita gladly agreed with Commander Titus's proposal. She committed her royal guards to the Legion to command for the wave's duration. She wants it to be known that Lyria will continue to place its trust in the Deep Legion for the upcoming terror. When asked if he's confident that he can handle the wave and the ant colony, Titus assured the crown that Legionem Abyssi, the Deep Legion, will deliver. They have been doing this job for over 3,000 years now. In all of the lands of Pangera, one fact has always been truthful. Under the ground, nobody can match his legion's strength. That might be true for those 3,000 years, but they haven't met Anthony yet. Our boy is currently trying to finalize his harvest by splitting his prey open. Seeing the innards of his kill, he almost hurled out of its hideousness. Even so, he swallowed his disgust and dug into today's dinner. No matter how disgusting the smell, look, and taste are, he cannot pass up the opportunity to gain some sweet, sweet biomass. His first few bites were tough. He could barely swallow the centipede meat. This might be the worst tasting thing he's ever put in his mouth. His brain was trying to tell him that starving might be a more appealing choice than enduring this for a moment longer. Thankfully, the voice of his past kept him straight. A pile of smashed centipede corpses could not possibly be worse than dying of starvation, right? Finally, he steeled his resolve and gut, ignored the vile taste, and feasted like a beast. He lost himself in the process until the system finally gave him that single point of biomass that he had been trying so hard for. It seems that no matter the size, each creature contains only one biomass. Anthony stayed in the scene of his killing out of curiosity for what happens to the parts that are simply impossible to ingest. After staying put for a moment, the hard shells, claws, and feet started radiating with a bright light. He found it creepy. It seems like the leftover materials are being absorbed straight back into the soil. If that's the case, then this cavern network must be absorbing dead monster pieces all over the place. As to what for, that's another question that needs to be answered. The more he learns, the more questions pop up. Ignoring the mysteries of the cave for now, Anthony refocused on the most important business. He currently has 3 biomass and 1 skill point to spend. With how scarce these upgrades are, he's treating this as a boardroom decision. For the biomass, he already has his eyes on improving his vision to level 3. He desperately needs a software update. His policy and approach when it comes to assessing threats before fighting remain unchanged. For that, upgrading his eyes is a must. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger and spent all his available biomass on the enhancement. He braced himself, but nothing can really prepare you for the searing pain a vision upgrade brings. Anthony frantically rolled around the floor. The agony was worse than before. He thought the last upgrade was bad, but this was simply inhumane. If he's to describe the feeling, it's like an entire swarm of angry bees declared his eyeballs the greatest offense to their species. He was brought to tears by the spectacularly intense itching. After things had calmed down a little, the prompt to spend his available skill point popped up. Since he's already in the most pain he's ever experienced, he hit the yes button mentally. Now that Stealth has reached level 5, there's a new upgrade option available for his choosing. It looks like level 5 skills can be upgraded to an improved version at the cost of another skill point. He would be an idiot not to select a skill that has served as his best lifeline in multiple instances. Upgrading Stealth 1 to Advanced Stealth improves the passive ability to avoid notice, and greatly increases its effectiveness when remaining still. Seeing his status window almost moved him to happy tears this time. He's come so far. He felt re-energized to conquer these caves and make every creature in here bow to his incredible power. Maybe at some point in the future. For now, it's wiser to humble himself. Even with all his new upgrades, Anthony elects to lay low and continue his routine of scouting and covering the area little by little. In a one-on-one fight against the wrong opponent, he would flat out lose without contest. Thankfully, Advanced Stealth granted him newfound confidence to explore unfamiliar shafts. He feels a little more open to heading deeper into this place. Now he's more careful when it comes to following pheromone trails. His curiosity might finally be satisfied as to what lies down below. If he didn't have new upgrades, he probably wouldn't touch the crater he discovered a few days ago. This time he's feeling more adventurous. He took a deep breath and strengthened his resolve. Moving directly downwards without a source of light still makes him nervous, but it's nothing he can't overcome. This type of thing isn't something humans can have a chance to do after all. He might as well take advantage of what an ant is capable of. Keeping his eyes peeled open, he crawled along the rugged walls of the crater. He thought he would be moving in the dark. That was true for the first part of the dive, but when he reached a certain altitude, the place actually started to light up. In fact, the mysterious light is ever so slightly becoming brighter the farther he goes down. Much to his surprise, he discovered that there was actually plant life flourishing down these barren caves. The more he thinks about it, the less sense it makes. Sunlight doesn't reach this place. Perhaps these plants have evolved to utilize magical veins to gather some kind of sustenance. Nevertheless, it's his first time seeing something beautiful in this god-forsaken place. While he was busy smelling the flowers, his antennae picked up something that made them wriggle. Just like before, he detected faint traces of pheromones. And just like before, he got his hopes up thinking that his clan, his tribe, his ant bros, are nearby. He felt quite proud of himself for choosing the correct path, even though it was scary. In his head, he made up a scenario where a mighty scout from his colony originated somewhere down this crater and pursued the thieves who dared to raid the colony higher into the cave. Anthony would love to be praised for his diligence and boldness for surviving the harshness of the surface on his own, out of the egg. While he was absent-mindedly walking towards the source of the pheromone, he came across yet another crossing. The shaft ended abruptly, splitting into 2 tunnels. He refused to barge blindly around the corners of the depths. He was a little traumatized by his run-in with the spider above. Down here, there could be full-grown spider monsters and other horrible things lurking. For now, he'll take his chances with the wider, less death-inducing sort of opening in case he needs to make a tactical retreat. When he traversed the path, he came across something that made his jaw drop to the floor. Spread out before his eyes was an impossible vista of luminous trees, grass, mushrooms, and all manner of plant life. He slowly walked through the bioluminescent forest under the shade of glowing mushroom caps. The radiant flowers swayed along with every blade of grass. It was so insane that Anthony had to ask Gandalf what the hell was going on in this place. He never expected to run into such a flourishing ecosystem under a death trap. How can an underground space of such massive scale even exist? He can't see the other side of the field. By his estimation, the ceiling alone looks about 60 meters in height. After the initial shock started wearing off, the fear of what might be lurking in these parts surfaced. If this place can support a thriving ecosystem, that must mean it's crawling with monsters. One optimistic thought had his little ant heart in a tight grip. Somewhere in this massive cavern, his colony might exist. Perhaps he'd have to travel farther than he'd ever traveled to find it. Maybe the scout he imagined passed through this area on its way to the upper cave. At any rate, exploring this space seems like a no-brainer. Considering its scale, the thought is a little demoralizing. The whole field is exotic and exciting, but it's hard to appreciate its beauty while he's absolutely clueless as to what is going on. In such a massive open space, could the monsters become supersized? How much biomass could they pile up in such a flourishing place like this? Shaking the useless hypothetical thoughts out of his head, Anthony reminded himself to firm his resolve and to think positively. After this initial scouting venture, he made it his goal to conquer this bizarre space and ultimately reunite with his colony. But in the meantime, he decided to retreat higher up to grind some levels. There are a few more species he has yet to suck biomass out of. He justified this move as the most sensible one, trying to convince himself that he wasn't being a coward. Before throwing his lot into the unknown luminescent territory, it's better to conquer the known territory first. He vowed to raise his level and gain more mutations in preparation for exploring the mysterious space. Reframing his mindset got him fired up. After exiting the crater, he went back to the temporary nest he's been staying in for the past few days. Unlike before, he's feeling a little pressured by the passing of time. If his suspicion is correct, the main tunnel must be connected to the cavern occupied by human soldiers. Once they come down and expand their reach, Anthony can kiss his EXP and biomass harvest goodbye. He would be forced to exclusively hunt down the crater without any intel. Taking every factor into account, he knew he had to move fast. It's necessary to throw a little bit of caution to the wind and make some bold moves to expedite the process. Without more EXP and biomass for upgrades, the journey down the crater could grant him a swift death. He activated stealth and got to hunting like he was running out of time. If he wants to maximize his gains, targeting creatures he hasn't consumed yet would be the way to do it. This way, he can ensure the bonus points courtesy of Gandalf. Hunting a giant croca beast on his own is out of the question. They are much more frightening than everything else in this place. They're practically apex predators. The most realistic targets are the slimy slug creatures. Anthony can't afford to sit around starving himself and studying their patterns, so he decided to wing it for once. When he spotted one, he got the chance to look at it closely. The creature looked even less appealing. This one was approximately twice his body in length. It's just a long, slimy body topped with gnarly spines at the back. It leaves a thick cover of mucus wherever it goes. Its body presumably produces such a disgusting substance to help grease its path and increase its speed. Other than that, Anthony could only speculate. For now, it's time to give that thing a surprise blast of acid. From up above, he squirted a perfectly aimed blast right into the slug's tail end. Disappointingly, nothing happened. It appeared to be impervious to his chemical attack. It just continued sliding along, completely oblivious that it was being hunted. It seems like the mucous membrane protecting its body makes the acid useless. If he tries a more physical approach by way of biting, his mandibles will probably get stuck. Of all the defenses this thing could employ, it just had to use a slime barrier. It's a perfect counter to his kit, and it's outrightly disgusting. Even so, Anthony has one more advantage up his sleeve. He has the power and creativity of the human mind. Actually, the trick he thought of is one that even ants on Earth are capable of. It's a trick he already used against the spider webs. After grabbing a rock with his mandibles, he took aim. He snuck up behind the slug, concealing his presence. It was pretty easy considering how slow it was moving. Once close enough, he threw the rock with full force to see if the slimy bastard would react. As expected, there was no reaction. It isn't clear if the slug even knows he's nearby. Anthony reactivated stealth and got to work. He grabbed rocks from all over the place and threw all of them against the slug's body. This way the rocks should pile some dirt up to soak in the slime. After piling up a decent bit of rocks to hinder its movement and drain the mucus, he paused to see if it would elicit a reaction this time. He positioned himself right above the slug, on account of his advanced stealth. His acid squirted out with a transparent color like a teenage boy who had just discovered how to go incognito. The slime definitely felt that white stuff sting as the hissing sound of melting membrane echoed. Anthony's plan worked. He might look a little pervy doing it, but it got the job done, and it dealt some solid damage. Hearing the sizzling and smelling the burnt flesh of the slug made him retch. Just when he thought this would be a free kill, the slimy bastard wriggled to turn in his direction. Now Anthony wonders how these slow slug monsters survive in this barren hellhole. There aren't any plants to feed on in the upper caves. That must mean they also hunt. Fully locked in and prepared for every possibility, he dashed away before the slug could spot him. As the acid burnt the slimy flesh little by little, the slug frantically looked around for the culprit, groaning in discomfort. When it finally detected a presence moving nearby, the seemingly docile creature opened its maw, exposing its sharp fangs and bellowing its bloody roar. From that maw came a long-range attack directed at Anthony. Thankfully, he was sufficiently defended by the rock he chose to hide behind. Based on the substance's properties, it looks like sticky acid. Seeing as this acid could melt rocks in the blink of an eye, he knew that it was much stronger than what he could produce through his butt. He was so distracted by the slug's impenetrable defenses that he never even considered that it could use some sort of slime for a fence, like an acid-spitting nightmare of death. It's too late to weep in tears. Ants can't cry anyway. The only thing he can do is commit to the bit and finish off the slimy bastard. The problem was his dwindling supply of acid shots within him. Usually he can squirt about 3 or 4 times at a time. He hasn't had the chance to measure exactly how long it takes to regenerate each load. If he continues firing now, it's hard to say when he can load up another. He can't really attack this slug from melee range with his mandibles. He'd get overpowered real quick. At the end of the day, the acid is his only viable weapon. It has to land the decisive blow. Anthony felt like Gandalf had forsaken him by forcing him into a battle with a creature built to be the perfect counter to his arsenal. If he weren't in such a hurry to get stronger, he wouldn't have taken this risk. For now, it's safer to work his way from the ceiling to the wall while keeping a low profile. This cowardly move surprisingly leveled up his grip to level 4. Scrambling about on walls and ceilings is the thing he does most. It's surprising that it just reached this level now. The slug had caught his trail and is now scaling the rocky walls. Battle is at hand, and the damn protective slime barrier is starting to regenerate. Based on the facts, this monster likely hunts by immobilizing and burning its foe with sticky acid before menacingly closing in to devour. Anthony has the upper hand when it comes to speed, so he's going to attempt a strategy he just cooked up. First, he stood to his full height and proudly presented his ass to the slug. Slimy Freak was thirsty for some backshots. Anthony danced and shook his dump truck to lure the slug closer. Apparently, even a monstrous slug creature over 2 meters long is unsure how to react to an ant wiggling its ass at it. Ultimately, Mr. Slug ran out of patience and opened its jaws once more to blast him with another shot of sticky acid. This is precisely what Anthony was aiming for. A wide-open mouth is the perfect target practice for his own acid shot. Landing a critical hit that made the slug ingest his poison upgraded the acid shot to level 4. It was a shot so perfect that even Gandalf approved. Mr. Slug foamed at the mouth, clearly hurting. It was a regular, solid jet of death. The reaction was immediate and potent. It lost its grip on the wall and fell back down to the ground, crushing its spine. Flawless plan and execution for the Wonder Ant. While the slug oozes out all sorts of disgusting goo and substances from all over its body, Anthony maintained his distance in case he fell short on dealing fatal damage. He only relaxed when the system recognized his victory over the level 4 Alcyonium slug, rewarding him with EXP. With the Slimy Freak gone limp, it looked like a 2-meter-long pile of doo-doo. With the hunt over, the harder part of the process comes next. He has to eat that corpse to harvest the biomass. If an ant could vomit, it'd be on the verge of it now. He yelled at himself and tried to reason that people on Earth eat slugs all the time. Biomass is biomass, no matter how you get it. At first glance, the slime layer is still coating the creature, but it stopped producing the repulsive lube when it took its final breath. To hasten the drying process, he dug some dirt to soak up the slime. Filling his mouth with dirt and dumping it on the disgusting slime wasn't the most appetizing start to a meal. It feels like a punishment, but he must endure for the sake of evolving and getting stronger. Once he dried a decent chunk of the slug's body, Anthony took his first bite. The texture alone would make the most adventurous eaters give up. The slime dressing didn't help either. Even so, Anthony persevered without many complaints this time. He switched it up with every bite in order to find the most palatable part of the corpse. Halfway through his reluctantly exotic food trip, his belly felt like it was about to explode. Thankfully, the system showed mercy and gave him the biomass from the coral slug. He can't eat the rest of the remains right away, but nutrients are hard to come by, so he'd rather bury it and save it for later. Time is limited, and his pace needs to pick up. That approach naturally comes with risks. To mitigate the risks brought about by rushing things, upgrading his acid gland and primary weapon to +2 sounds like the move. Mr. Slug was a huge haul, but Anthony still has energy to scout up and down the tunnels for more opportunities. Not far from his kill zone, he spotted an old friend, the thorn lizard. Seeing another one of these guys made him feel a little nostalgic for his very first official hunt. The next prey is decided. This time he can probably reuse some elements of his first plan for this attack. Using the wall terrain and acid to battle the creature should be enough. Preparing a trap would consume far too much time. A head-on battle using his acid and mandibles could be a great limit test for where he currently stands combat-wise. Using his improved antennae and vision, nothing can escape his radar. He easily spotted the lizard tucked up against a rock to rest. Anthony positioned himself right above without getting noticed. Right now, he only has enough juice for 1 or 2 acid shots, and he needs to make them count. Since the clueless lizard is resting, he's able to sneak up within 5 meters without tripping any alarm bells as long as he moves with utmost patience. The last fight with Mr. Slug was way too risky. This time, he has the time to maximize the odds in his favor as much as possible. This poor thorn lizard doesn't know what's about to hit him from above. Like an airstrike, Anthony dumped his acid on top of his target's head, waking it up and making it writhe in agony. That was his most accurate shot yet. A literal bullseye that blinded the lizard. It immediately tried its hardest to dislodge the acid by moving recklessly. Anthony stood back to avoid being stabbed or poisoned needlessly. His mandibles aren't that fantastic a weapon yet. As a worker ant, they are built for digging and holding. They might look terrifying up close, but they are not made for piercing or cutting. The teeth on the inside of each jaw are flat and unable to rip or tear into flesh. Some ants, like bull ants, have long, sharp, and deadly mandibles. There's also the trap-jaw ant with its strong locking muscles that coil like a spring before slamming shut like a rat trap. Without any such potential due to his species, Anthony's bites would feel more like squeezing instead of shredding. Each bite won't be doing a whole lot of damage, but this is the perfect opportunity to see how many upgrades he needs. Since he's lacking in quality, he might be able to make up for any deficiency with quantity. Straddling the lizard like a racehorse, he started launching an all-out biting attack on the back of its neck. The prey tried its hardest to shake him off, but his grip was too strong to dislodge. The more he bit, the more pain he inflicted. It was driving the lizard insane. After countless little underpowered bites, the lizard finally croaked, and his bite skill reached level 4. His gamble paid off, and he got a hefty upgrade as a reward. Anthony felt incredibly proud of himself for defeating the thorn lizard using grit and perseverance. Up on the surface, Commander Titus is stuck in his office, going through mountains of paperwork for the endless number of things that need organizing before the big expedition. Quiet is difficult to come across these last few days. The Queen's move to lend assistance by providing the royal guards has been unexpected, though immensely helpful. His legionaries had been expecting regular frontline soldiers to plug up the gap in numbers. Though still worthy, they pale in comparison to the quality and discipline of royal guards. The moment they arrived in the dungeon, everything flowed smoothly, and preparations sped up. Things really start to move when the name of the Queen is involved. Looking at his desk, Titus wondered if he could find more stonewood once he re-enters the dungeon. It has a wonderful texture, flecked and dark. In his younger years, he carried a single slab on his back all the way up to the surface to make his office desk. To this day, he's never found a more perfect material. Since he made the furniture himself, Titus included a secret switch that opens a hidden compartment. Hidden inside that hollowed space were vials filled with radiant blue liquid. He sighed and unfurled his sleeve to expose a curious tattoo. At first glance, it looked like a magic formation branded directly into his skin. He grabbed one of the vials and poured its contents directly in the middle of the formation. When the blue liquid made contact with his tattoo, it lit up and merged together. Titus gritted his teeth, obviously in pain due to the strange substance. After emptying the vial, he remained seated at his desk while enduring the agonizing process. After what felt like forever, the pain slowly subsided. He placed the empty vial back in the hollow compartment. He's gone through half of his supply now. After carefully closing the hidden compartment, the desk looked like perfectly normal furniture once more. Now that he's done with doping, it's time to get back to where a good legionary belongs, the dungeon. He grabbed the mighty axe that had been hanging idle in his office for far too long. It's time to get this old thing sharpened again. A good soldier ensures that his blade is properly prepped in time for action. Down in the dungeon that legionaries dubbed Newbie Cave, soldiers are now transporting tied-up prisoners inside. The level 35 fire mage and the level 30 ranger that Anthony scrapped a while ago discussed amongst themselves. They have no idea as to why they're bringing prisoners down this dangerous place. One thing is for sure though, none of them are going back to the surface alive. All Ranger Mirren knows is that the induction ceremony takes place somewhere deep within the dungeon. The longtime legionaries never speak about what goes down during the induction. The Deep Legion has a history spanning 3,000 years. They are shrouded in mystery, and most people know so little about this private army that once saved civilization. No matter, Mirren will soon become a full-time legionary herself. The Legion's secrets will be her secrets, and she's ready to guard them with her life. Here in the Newbie Cave, Mirren and the fire mage Donnellan were tasked to observe how dungeon mercs hunt. Those dumbasses mostly fumble around the danger zones and get hurt. They never care to remember that dungeon monsters are completely different from those on the surface. These merc jocks are just a constant nuisance on the Legion side. They always overextended for the sake of grinding levels, never caring for the rescue teams that have to constantly bail them out. They always bite off more than they can chew, and never learn their lesson. Out of nowhere, a Legion tribune approached Mirren and Donnellan. She asked if they were ready for the expedition. Mirren respectfully answered that their equipment and armor have been checked and polished, but the tribune wasn't talking about their gear. She's asking if they are mentally prepared for what's to come. In this place, the commander or a tribune like her can mess up once, and it's game over. Donnellan and Mirren are locked for promotion once they venture down below. It's a great occasion that every legionary treasures. Even so, they must never let the festivity be a distraction. In a few hours, they will start sweeping the upper area clean to set up the forward camp in the forest expanse. Back to Anthony's grind. A furiously busy day of hunting and filling his belly just passed. As expected, taking on greater risks brought him greater rewards. Circumstances forced him to be more aggressive, and it certainly paid off. Eager to check his progress and his incredible bounty, he opened the status window. After reluctantly consuming the crunchy thorn lizard and the remaining slimy coral slug meat, he gained 2 biomass points in the bank. Once he was full, he continued hunting, and chanced upon another isolated coral slug to munch on. After positioning himself in an advantageous location, he repeated the trick he used to deal with the first slug. The purple coral slug was not immune to his expert rage-baiting technique. As soon as it opened its mouth to attack with sticky acid, Anthony sprayed that freak with his hot and sticky liquid. Shooting inside the mouth is guaranteed to be an instant critical hit. He messed up the timing a little bit, and he also got sprayed by the acidic mucus the monster projected. Having some sticky goop blasted on his body was bad enough, but the burn chunked his HP by 10. A section of his back carapace and thorax was partially melted. After recovering to full health not too long ago, he was forced back to the red zone. Even a partial burn took out 1/3 of his health. If it had covered more of his body, this would have been life-threatening. At that moment, he felt severely tempted to focus on upgrading his carapace to bolster his flimsy defense, but there are so many high-priority parts that need to be upgraded. After dragging out the battle of attrition with utmost precaution, he managed to kill the purple coral slug. Consuming the slug regenerated a good bit of HP, bringing his bar back to green. After the disgusting meal, he felt mostly restored back to a picture of ant perfection. Looking at his upgrade menu, a few basic skills are in the running for upgrade priority. Still, he cannot pass up the chance to improve his most effective weapon. Acid Shot can now be upgraded to Improved Acid Shot. A leap in quality will improve its accuracy and increase its range. With the range boost, he can make more reliable shots from a greater distance. It's a no-brainer. It drastically improves his safety as well as his ability to output reliable damage. Hungry for more skill points, he hunted a lone wolf lizard and opened with his bread-and-butter combo, Stealth plus Acid Shot. After that kill, a lot of his skills are converging on level 4. It would be great if he had the points to upgrade them all, if possible. Losing out on EXP would be a tragedy. Now for the tricky bit, the management of his scarce biomass. If possible, he wants to continue upgrading his eyesight to level 4. Superior vision against other monsters has been critical for him to spot and locate juicy, isolated prey. It also gives him peace of mind against being sneak attacked from blind spots. The advantage in senses must never be lost, or he could find himself in a deadly croca beast ambush or something worse. Vision is good all around, but in order to farm more biomass, directly improving his combat level would mean going all in on Acid Shot. Afterwards, he'll be left with 1 extra biomass to spend on either legs, carapace, or mandibles. All of them would help his general capabilities. A +1 in legs would make him more mobile. It would be helpful for scouting, retreating, chasing, and fighting. Leveling up mandibles doesn't sound too appealing at the moment. It simply needs too much biomass investment to yield tangible results. For now, the 2 viable paths are +4 eyes or +3 acid glands with +1 legs. His cautious nature makes him lean toward the defensive route. He'll be moving into a new environment soon. Having every advantage possible is key to survival. After much deliberation, Anthony finally purchased the upgrade for his eyes at the cost of 4 biomass. Same as before, his eyes were assaulted by unimaginable pain. He rolled around the floor while trying his best not to scratch his eyeballs out. They were literally growing and stretching inside his eye holes. His carapace was shifting to make way for its new shape. Anthony prayed to Gandalf to make the torture stop. Mutations are amazing, but the process of mutating can only be created by a cruel god. After what felt like forever, the burning pain finally subsided. His eyesight qualitatively improves. His peripheral vision had expanded by quite a lot. It's not perfect, but the current Anthony is a long way ahead of the clueless baby ant reborn in Pangea not too long ago. Soon, he might be able to reunite with the colony. He could feel it in his gut. For now, harvesting more EXP and biomass as efficiently as possible continues. That means hunting down new targets for the bonus biomass they grant. Since he's now fully rested, it might be time to take on one of those blade-tailed rats. Isolating one of these rodents might be tough, though. On the way to the main tunnel, his antennae picked up faint vibrations from a disturbance up ahead. If it's another fight between monsters, he stands to gain some lucky points. With newfound optimism, he made his way towards the commotion. Just a few days after the Croca Beast and Centipede War, Anthony came across a battle between 4 of the usual suspects and 3 wolves. It was intense and bloody. Though outnumbered, the wolves made up the deficit with ferocity. Unbeknownst to both parties, a young invisible ant is lurking in the ceiling, waiting to dump some sticky stuff at the right time. First, he moved stealthily and slightly further away for a better angle. This is the perfect time to take advantage of his new skills after all. After being in a deadlock for a few minutes, both sides broke apart to size each other up from a distance. One wrong twitch, and the conflict will undoubtedly reignite at a moment's notice. The fire of fury in both parties was intense, but they were cautious. It's up to Anthony to stir the pot a little by shooting his shot. The victim of his acid shot was the centipedes. He had a lot of history with these critters. It's only fitting to light a fire under their asses. Almost immediately, the hounds took advantage of the break in the enemy formation on account of his spray. One of them solely focused on the wounded centipede coiling in pain. It was cut off from its allies' support. The wolf doesn't give a rat's ass about the empty threats of the injured centipede, leaping forward like a rabid animal. In response, the centipede squirted an acid shot of its own to knock the hound out of balance. Neither side was giving the other any time to catch its breath. The centipede tried to close the gap with a sneak attack but was completely thwarted by the hound's spiked tail. Watching from the best seat in the house, Anthony was stunned by the savagery of this fight. He imagined himself down there, fighting the hounds. If he were hit by that tail, he would be squashed into a pancake, no doubt about it. It's a scary thought, but it's a scarier reality. The injured centipede wasn't faring too well under the hound's relentless assault. Eventually, it was clawed to the ground, never to skitter around again. The look on the wolf's face was proud, as if it were thinking that a bug shouldn't dare threaten the greatness of a hound. But before it could use its tail to deal the finishing blow, something unexpected happened. Anthony sprayed the hound with copious amounts of acid, melting its fur and burning its flesh. He mischievously laughed while staying in the cover of stealth. It's not too honorable to interrupt the wolf's proud moment, but he had to do what he had to do. Of course, a single blast of acid is not nearly enough to finish off something as big and mighty as a hound. The same is also true for the centipedes. The war between two powerful species has reached a critical moment. With one centipede out of the picture, the battle has become quite even. The insects seem a little unwilling to proceed with the loss of their advantage, but the hounds were pumped to continue now that momentum is on their side. To humble the proud canines a little, Anthony splashed the hound leading the pack with acid shot. The upgrade in his artillery weapon was on full display. It made the hound stumble and fall on the ground, thrashing and roaring in pain. The centipedes saw the helpless dog and advanced to seize their chance. They used their claws to grab and restrain the dog from moving, shutting down its deadly fangs. The many-legged freaks used their long bodies to constrict and crush the snarling foe. No matter how hard the hound trashed, the claws holding him down drew blood, and the stings delivered lethal poison all over his body. While he still has the chance, Anthony decided to abandon the ceiling and head towards the outskirts. One of the hounds was being strangled, pinched, and poisoned to death, but the other dogs were nowhere to be seen. There isn't a single pause in the carnage. With everyone distracted by finishing off their foes, Anthony was free to get close to the half-dead centipede. After a few chomps with his mandibles, this thing would probably die. He demonstrated the strength of a level 4 mandible, breaking the skin in one bite, letting the blood spurt. The last hit gave him more EXP, and he was free to drag his prey away. The battle he directly influenced is reaching its climax. Those crawlers were homed in on killing the hound. The 3 remaining centipedes were clearly giving their all for the sake of survival. They are lashing their poisoned spikes to ward off the other hounds. Even when weakened by poison, the strength of the hound's spiked tail must never be underestimated. It swatted the persistent insects away, making them crash against the cavern walls and stunning the creatures, rendering them immobile. A lot of their legs and claws were shattered. Both parties have sustained severe injuries, barely able to put up a fight. Now they're just circling each other, waiting for an easy opening to exploit. As if a hidden start gun had gone off, the two monsters lunged at each other, latching and coiling around their foes. Anthony quietly watched from the sidelines. This is like a kaiju battle. By the end of the fight, neither the centipede nor the hound had enough strength to keep going. They fell on the floor at the exact same time. Both creatures collapsed, completely spent and down for the count. Anthony was free to walk in the bloody aftermath of the all-out war. All of these creatures are on the verge of death, unable to defend themselves. It's horrible news for them, but it's like Christmas for our ant boy. He pats himself on the back for making stronger monsters dance in the grip of his mandibles. He was like a master conductor at a concert. All of these helpless idiots with a sliver of health were basically a free farm of unprecedented EXP and biomass harvest. The Lupus Draco cubs ranged from level 3 to 4, while the Claw Centipedes were around level 2 to 3. They each gave Anthony varied amounts of EXP, but it all added up to more than he ever harvested before. This made his EXP bar shoot up to the moon, reaching the level cap and unlocking the evolution menu. The system notification was music to his ears. Anthony dropped down to his many knees and prayed to Gandalf. After dealing the last hits, it's time to munch on some dead meat. He nibbled just enough out of every carcass to slurp the juicy biomass. He's been hearing something, a sound that keeps growing louder. He needs to consume like a glutton to maximize his harvest. For some reason, he has a terrible feeling that the sound is coming his way. Biting into the meat of the Lupus Draco cub, a new creature yet to be unlocked in his profile portfolio, granted him bonus biomass. When they grow up, they become fearsome wolf dragons. Anthony wanted to stay for another hour or even just 10 minutes, but the sound of marching stomps was getting louder. He wanted to bring some takeout, but he's already consumed enough meat to equal an entire wolf dragon, and his stomach is about to burst. Right then and there, he remembered reading something in his ant research back home. You see, some ants have two stomachs. Scouts and workers don't always carry prey back to the colony. Sometimes they eat and fill up their so-called social stomach. Once back at the nest, they regurgitate the food they collected. It's a bit disgusting, but it's also practical. Some workers even become some sort of living storage containers. They swell to ridiculous sizes for the sake of feeding the colony. If Anthony's personal stomach is filled to the brim, maybe it's time to access his social stomach. Ignoring the stomping sounds, he indulged in the second round of feasting for the sake of accumulating more biomass. The dead centipedes and hounds were absolutely devoured, their meat and innards chomped away by his mandibles. Absolutely immersed in his feast, Anthony was snapped back into reality by the sight of Lampfire moving closer to his position. He immediately took off. All his gains would have been for nothing if he had been caught by humans. All the meat in both his stomachs was weighing him down, slowing his escape. Upon reaching the edge of the wall, he pushed his limbs to the limit, engaged his grips, and climbed despite the apparent increase in difficulty to do so. He refused to look back out of fear, but he could hear the human soldiers ripping the remains of the creatures apart. His nest is only 10 meters away. Surely he gets there before he gets caught. The humans are starting to come into view right below his position. Their presence brought more monsters out of hiding, resisting the invasion. No matter how dominant the claw centipedes and wolf dragons were in this ecosystem, they were no match against coordinated attacks by humans. Blades, magic, and arrows were mightier than uncontrolled savagery. Anthony cloaked himself with stealth and pushed his fat ass up the damn wall. Sounds of spells being cast, arrows whistling in the air, and swords being swung filled the cavern. It was a one-sided slaughterfest. Thankfully, Anthony managed to reach his tunnel without being spotted. Since he can't go out through the main entrance, he must utilize the dirt wall. He prepared this escape route beforehand, but now, his ass had become too fat to fit through the little hole. He's got too much junk in his trunk to squeeze through. Anthony tried his hardest to pull out, but he was more stuck than a stepsister in a washing machine. After expending all of his strength, he managed to force his way out of the little hole, face planting in the process. Now would be the time to spend his biomass and haul his ass down the crater. At the cost of 4 biomass, he upgraded his acid glands to +3 and legs to +1. Just like with his vision upgrades, upgrading acid glands felt like the worst diarrhea, with the way it burned his ass. The sensation was horrible, but he could not afford to stay still. He would prefer not to fall to his death after reaching the crater. With added weight, each step will have to be properly supported. Hopefully, the 1-level upgrade to his legs gives him enough strength to sustain a lot of extra bulk. The way down the dark crater was treacherous. He had a lot of close calls. His grip and upgraded legs were struggling to keep him attached to the walls. Halfway down the hole, a massive explosion shook the entire dungeon, sending some debris down the crater. Those humans must have detonated a nearby dirt wall. That means they're past his nest and about to find this crater. With utmost urgency, Anthony threw caution to the wind and skittered straight down as fast as he could. Staying near the blasts would get him killed. Those humans are bound to make the climb down, and he only has enough time for one important task. Thankfully, he reached the bottom without any major incidents. It was exhausting and nerve-wracking, but he made it. He opened the system and accessed the evolution menu. With congratulations, the system presented him with a choice to pick the path he wanted to walk on. He can evolve as a mature worker ant, effectively staying a formica, or branch out and condense his monster core. Being a mature worker ant would increase his stats and unlock new skills on a linear path. On the other hand, condensing a monster core will allow him to utilize MP and to empower custom evolution. Right now, advancing as an adult worker ant would give him the greatest boost in survival, but condensing a monster core opens the door to a world of magic. Thoroughly enamored by the second choice, he didn't hesitate to pick the riskier path. Anthony blacked out for an unknown amount of time. He labored to slowly open his eyes back up. The first thing he felt was the boiling ball of heat inside his thorax. It's probably his newly spawned monster core. He got back up to his feet, weakened and slowed by the evolution process. He can't stay in this place for a prolonged period of time. The soldiers are still up there. Those humans could be dropping down the crater to investigate. Although it's hard, he has to move. While on the run, he opened his status window to see what had changed. His level went down, and his status took a massive downgrade. He cursed Gandalf for resetting his progress back to level 1. All his hard work, hunting, and accumulating experience went up in smoke. The ridiculous luck and opportunities he created for himself were wiped out. It hasn't been easy to survive up to this point. A reset doesn't feel justified at all, but when he calmed down and took a closer look at his status window, he found the silver lining. The MP menu has been unlocked. It had gone from 0 to 10. His hunch was correct. The monster core is the vital ingredient to mastering magic for creatures like him. This explains why the monsters upstairs were so drawn to the magic-rich pool. They even treat it as a neutral zone free of conflict. By drinking that water, they were able to absorb mana and hasten the formation of their monster cores. Although he practically took a shortcut to form his, the significant downgrade to his stats just to get 10 MP, he can't use stings yet. To make matters worse, he's forced to advance into even more dangerous territory from now on. Those stats would have definitely come in handy for the sake of his survival. He tried to tap into his MP to manipulate some loose leaves, but nothing happened. If he made the wrong choice, he wouldn't know what to do. But the prospect of using magic and mana was just too enticing. He'll have to live with his choice. Maybe this path would allow him to go up against the monsters he could only run away from. Since he'll be considered unevolved again, that means he can gain more levels and skill points much faster. He decided to not look at the skills menu in case mana shaping or spell chanting appears. He intends to resist that temptation. For now, it's time to explore the vast and unknown underground floor. At first glance, the ceiling looks to be 60 to 70 meters high. For now, he refuses to climb something that high. One slip and it would certainly plunge him down to certain death. Besides, his eyesight is still not good enough to see the ends of the walls even at +4. As an insect, he doesn't have regular eyes like a human, but compound eyes. That means his vision doesn't necessarily have one point of focus. Unlike humans, who can see one place they are directly staring into in great detail, compound eyes are capable of looking in many directions at once, albeit with poorer detail. Reminded of that fact, he felt vindicated in his choice to heavily invest in his vision, mutating it to +5. Maybe Gandalf will give him a hint as to what happens when his mutations reach insane levels. But God doesn't seem too keen on listening to his requests these days. His prayers are met with nothing but crickets. It's as if the great Gandalf can only reply with a shoulder shrug. A little advice would be nice, especially now that he's in a more unfamiliar area. The scene in front of him was straight out of an alien planet, a confirmation that he really is in another world. Anthony's adventurous nature took over as he roamed the grasslands freely. He followed every little thing that caught his attention like a little kid. When he came across a mushroom, he tried biting into it. He immediately spat it out, and the simple act of putting it into his mouth chipped at his HP. The big bite mark he left started oozing some sort of acidic sap. If he can take damage just from chomping on a mushroom, then what else can threaten his life in this place? He made a mental note to never touch, let alone bite, random things in this area. Now, he needs to move away from the crater in case the soldiers storm the place. Once far enough, it would be smart to dig a hiding spot he can retreat to. He wondered whether there were any other creatures down here. Anthony jinxed his peace by thinking about that. From the ceiling, bird monsters descended, flapping their wings and rattling sharply. Their target was the claw centipedes chilling on the ground. These bastards might be tough on the upper cave, but they're just another source of nutrients down here. Anthony watched as the foe he would struggle against was picked up like a free gummy worm. He hid under the mushroom caps, admitting that he might have been a little too overconfident. With improved skills and a condensed monster core, he thought he'd be a top dog, that he could explore this foreign place without fear. That's clearly not the case here. If a centipede that massive gets caught so easily, a little ant like him would be at the near bottom of the food chain. Clearly, the evolved form of the creatures he's gotten familiar with resides in this area. It's simply not fair. He's got no colony to rely on for safety. If he just bit the bullet and evolved into a mature worker ant, his body would have grown to about 3 meters long and 2 feet thick. Nevertheless, he has to live with his choices. He knew that the creatures were bound to be stronger here. He knew that when he chose the more tedious path of condensing a monster core, if he just relied on his stealth and upgraded senses, he still had a decent chance of survival. Keeping his invisibility active, he studied the strange foliage of trees and fungi flourishing everywhere. Just like the flowers he saw the first time, these trees don't need sunlight to survive. They spawn these strangely fleshy leaves. Until he's 100% certain that these trees aren't disguised ant traps, it's best to be careful and avoid touching the fleshy leaves. Suddenly, his aimless wandering was interrupted by a disturbance from a distance. This time he refused to cower under the mushroom caps. It's time to gather intel. Like a stalking panther, he kept his posture low while traversing the forest. With his eyes and antennae working together, he pinpointed the exact location of the disturbance. Walking around with his advanced stealth toggled on, it breached the EXP threshold and leveled up. It's taken an unusually long time to reach this level. Advanced skills require more use before they get upgraded. Regardless, it happened at the perfect time. He just found what he's been looking for. Up ahead was a croca beast, a gravely injured one. Thankfully, this one hasn't evolved yet, and the massive gash on its body is sapping its energy. Seeing the beast up close, Anthony was terrified. It was the first monster he ever saw upon reincarnating after all. Back then, it was gleefully eating an ant alive. It was a traumatizing first impression. If ants could dream and have nightmares, this reptilian monster would be in his. Staying on course, this particular croca beast was evidently involved in some heavy fighting, As long as he can play this correctly, this could be a golden opportunity sent by the heavens. There are no other creatures around, and the Croca is slowly fading. It's time to put his fears behind him and seize the bonus biomass he had to forego before. Anthony valiantly jumped out of the foliage. He turned his fat ass in midair and took aim. Once locked in, he squirted a hefty acid shot. Deliberately targeting the open wound sounds a bit cruel, but it's a weak spot that he can exploit. The Croca beast snarled in pain as his wound was coated with the corrosive substance. Most of it breached the wound and burned its insides. It was naturally furious that a little ant would dare to take advantage of its weakness. Refusing to let up, Anthony shot another load, spewing his acid head-on. He forced the croc to take a big gulp of his acid, corroding its mouth, tongue, and throat. If these dumbass monsters keep letting him fire acid into their mouths, it might just become his signature move. Maybe he'll call it Anthony Mouthshot. This ant got a chill. He immediately realized that the name could be misconstrued in a very dirty way. Anyways, the croc is now recklessly trashing and growling, desperate to stop the pain. Today is clearly the croc's worst day. He got into a deadly scuffle and survived only to get trolled by a little insect. Anthony thought 2 shots would do the job, but it was more resilient than expected. The Croca beast went down on all fours and started chasing after him like an unhinged beast. This desperate dash was brutal. Anthony was at a complete disadvantage when it came to speed. When the croc got close enough, it slashed down with its sharp claw. He barely dodged out of the way with a clumsy jump. If that had connected, it would have been lights out for sure. Trying his best to remain level-headed, Anthony decided to take one last stand against his nightmare matchup. Since his back is already turned and his ass is perfectly angled, he squirted one more acid shot. Unfortunately, the croc was clever enough to predict his only damaging move, easily moving away from the splash zone. The croc might look like a brute, but it's smarter than it looks. It continued chasing after Anthony, grabbing every chance to hurl an attack with murderous intent oozing from its every pore. Each claw strike was too close for comfort. If he gets nicked by a single one of those sharp things, it's wraps. He can't keep on rolling the dice on a 50-50 chance of left or right. The only way out is through. Instead of running away, he turned around and ran at the reptile head-on. The descending claw nicked one of his antennae, ripping it off cleanly. It was a painful blow, painful enough to make him nauseous, but he's endured worse. Backing out is out of the question. He must double down. With pure desperation, he bit into the croc's left leg as hard as he could with his mandibles. This way he can knock the beast out of balance. Biting into the tough scales skyrocketed his bite skill to level 5, opening the upgrade path to crushing bite at the cost of 1 skill point. He didn't waste a moment and mentally slammed on the confirm button. Before the croc could retreat, he wanted to put everything on the line in one final attempt. Unlike the fire bite that barely broke through the scales, the second one produced an audible crunch and drew the reptile's cold blood. Anthony tried to hold on, but he was bitch-slapped by the croc's tail. He slammed into a nearby rock, the impact knocking his soul out of his body.